Chapter 717. She could still understand physics. Which subject was climbing walls? The storyboard director glanced at the youngster in confusion. Bo-Gio didn't want to say anything. She was starting to suspect that the Almighty's confession had been a dream. Time trickled by. There wasn't anyone in Jiang City who didn't know about young Master Qin's business skills. In less than 10 minutes, Qin Mo walked out with the French shop manager. The manager was extremely passionate, thanking him repeatedly. He wasn't a local after all, and the French restaurant required the freshest fruits. French cuisine placed great emphasis on the use of ingredients. It was a famous saying that second-rate ingredients couldn't be used to create good dishes. French cuisine used local ingredients, which resulted in different tastes in the north and south. Hence, the most important thing was to eat the right food at the right time of the day. It would be best if someone could deliver the ingredients every day, especially the ones that had just been plucked from the ground. Then, they would be able to taste the ingredients. Bo-Ju sat on the sofa lazily, a smile on her face as she watched the scene unfold. What should she do? The sight of the Almighty discussing business made her want to bring him home. It was just a show. In reality, there were many ways to sell the fruits. However, the Almighty had obviously chosen this one out of consideration for the elderly who were still dragging their carts around in such hot weather to sell coconuts. Qin Mo watched as the youngster sat there. Without hesitation, he walked over and placed a hand beside her ear. He lowered his body, his magnetic and lingering voice pleasant to the ears. Hungry. A long time ago. Bo-Ju lifted her lids, her gaze landing on the thin lips not far from her. She couldn't help but remember the paper separating them just now. She tilted her head to avoid his deep gaze. Qin Mo was about to raise his hand, but he retracted it. His gaze dimmed because of the youngster's repulsion. Qin Mo never revealed his emotions. Hence, in front of the camera, his handsome face was the main focus. No one noticed that in that moment, Qin Mo's pupils had constricted. Both the storyboard director and the cameraman could sense an obvious change in Almighty Qin's aura. It seemed much colder. Lobster or steak? Choose one. Qin Mo straightened his body and stuffed one hand into his pocket. In that instant, he seemed to have recovered his indifference that kept people at arm's length. This seemed to be the Almighty Qin they knew. It was probably because Almighty Qin had laughed so many times today that they had forgotten his original appearance. But, Almighty, our crew didn't provide any lobsters. The storyboard director spoke softly. Qin Mo glanced over. To thank us, the other party wants to treat us. The other party? Who? The restaurant manager smiled at the right time, and the romance of the French was triggered. The people from the production team were already shocked because they had not expected that the guests on the show would be treated by someone else. Are all top students able to do this? It remained to be seen whether Brainiac could do that. French cuisine was all about appetizers. Just by watching Almighty Qin raise his glass and chat with the chef, they felt that they had brought a variety show to new heights. Chapter 718. The storyboard director glanced over at Almighty Qin. Since he had been watching them, she didn't dare to be too loud. It's with the main director. The production team won't be broadcasting it. It's just for you. I understand, but how did your main director get a photo of Brother Mo when he was young? Bo-Gio arched a brow. Based on her understanding of the Almighty, such a photo should have been hidden and not shown to anyone. The storyboard director lowered her voice. The main director said that a good friend from the industry had shown it to him, but he didn't want to reveal his friend's name. But based on his description, she should be a beauty. Beauty? Another good friend of the main director? Movie queen and popped into her mind. She reached out to pat the storyboard director's shoulder. Your production team isn't bad. They have a bright future ahead of them. The storyboard director, what was with the strange feeling of being complimented? Just because they had gotten a photo of Almighty Qin, they had a bright future ahead of them? Big Spade, how dare you say you aren't interested in Almighty Qin? Hurry and get the photo. I'll help you keep an eye on Brother Mo. Don't let him come over. The youngster stuffed a hand in her pocket, looking as handsome as ever, smart and sly. The storyboard director went to look for the main director. The main director was still immersed in the ice cream kiss. He turned to the storyboard director with a serious expression. This scene isn't bad. It has the effect of a variety show. Embark, we can let them kiss a few more times. The storyboard director. Boss, have you ever seen a variety show with kissing? Where's your integrity? Half a minute later, after explaining the situation, the storyboard director finally retrieved her boss's phone. She walked towards Bojo anxiously. You have to keep this a secret from Almighty Chin. Don't worry. Bojo winked. So handsome. The storyboard director coughed heavily before handing the phone to the youngster. A photo that was obviously taken in secret appeared on the screen. The photo was obviously taken at the Chin family's old mansion. The main character was dressed in a pure white British suit and had delicate features like a doll. He was sitting in the garden in the summer with a cup of hot tea on the table covered with plants. He was holding a book in his hand. He probably noticed that someone was taking a picture of him in front of him, so he moved the book to the side and looked at the camera as if he was looking at some bacteria. His arrogant dog-like appearance was simply unique in the world. In an instant, it struck her nerves. The rumbling of thunder in the sky was no different from what he was feeling now. This is Almighty? Bojo didn't know how she managed to ask that question. Probably because she had never seen the youngster speak like that. The storyboard director nudged her shoulder. Were you touched by the Almighty's cuteness? It wasn't just cuteness. Bojo took another glance at the photo before turning to look at the Almighty. It was an indescribable feeling. The storyboard director continued. The Almighty's cuteness when he was young would make anyone want to rub his head and kiss his cheeks. Bojo took a moment to recall the incident. That day, her father had suddenly wanted to introduce her to a friend of the same age. That in itself was strange enough. Since she had only been around the keyboard since young, she wasn't good at making friends. Chapter 719. But the moment Bojo saw her little friend, she forgot about the little rocket. Her father was lying to her. How was he her age? He was a puppy doll. Especially when he spoke, he was very polite. Compared to the doll in front of her, a pet like the little rocket was really boring. Hence, she couldn't control herself and pounced on him the first time they met. But it was obvious that her little friend didn't understand her passion. Instead, he rubbed his forehead, using a cold and noble voice to warn her, "Get up." At that time, she was really possessed. She felt that her little friend was too cute and couldn't control herself. She kissed his face. At that time, her little friend's expression changed, his angry little face turning red. He looked at her as though she was 1,000 germs, wanting to destroy her on the spot. At that time, Bojo felt that her little friend didn't understand her passion, which was why he despised her. She stood there aggrievedly, rubbing the bump on her head. She took out her best things to please the doll, asking him, "How much do you cost per kilo? What do you want?" The doll seemed to be very interested in her keyboard and gave her 3 words in a very light tone. Since she was a doll, she had a temper. Bojo understood. "I want to buy you. You can be my pet." Bojo bent over and took out her little treasure. Listening to her words, the doll couldn't stand it anymore and knocked her head. "Are you an idiot? You don't buy people by weight." "Oh." Bojo was disappointed for a moment. "Then I won't give you money. I'll take care of you in the future." The doll's veins popped. "I don't need you to take care of me. Don't be shy." She understood the doll's feelings. The doll glared at her for a while. "You better shut up right now." "Fine. You won't let me talk because you're shy." I know. You just ate a lot of chocolate. You like it, right? I'll go steal some more." At that time, Bojo felt that the doll was hard to coax. She couldn't understand his thoughts at all. But since she was prepared to take care of him as a pet, what else could she do? She couldn't control herself. She had to pamper him. Since then, every time she saw a pet, she would press him down, rub him, and kiss him. Her pet was good at everything. It was beautiful, looked good when it ate, and read books that gave her headaches. The number of times it called her an idiot was increasing, but it was still very handsome. It was just that it had a bad temper and was easily shy. It was always embarrassed in front of outsiders. In the past, Bojo had been puzzled. What a good relationship they had. Why was her canine pet always embarrassed? Bojo understood now. If the Almighty knew that he was the one who always pushed him down, The Almighty would probably close his eyes and throw her into the sea to feed the sharks. Seeing that the youngster hadn't spoken for so long, the storyboard director stirred. "What are you thinking about?" "I thought about how I had pushed the Almighty down when he was young. It was best if no one knew about this. She would be happy on her own. An unexpected reunion with his childhood pet. Moreover, this person was an Almighty. The feeling was rather subtle. Honestly, Bojio had never expected the adorable puppy doll to grow into the Almighty." Chapter 720. It was probably because the youngster had turned back too many times with a seductive expression. Chinemo glanced up, the corners of his eyes arching as he walked over. Bojio had never felt guilty in the past, but this time, it was probably because she had pounced on the Almighty often when she was young and had even gone overboard. She couldn't relate her puppy to the Almighty in front of her, hence, her reaction was a little too much. She tossed the phone back to the storyboard director as though it was a hot potato. Seeing the youngster's actions, Chin-Emo narrowed his deep eyes. "What's that?" "The main director's phone." Bojio chuckled lightly, tried her best to divert the Almighty's attention. "Do you want an ice cream cone?" Chin-Emo retracted his gaze, focusing on the youngster's smiling face. The thoughts he had suppressed started rising again. A certain someone's behavior of getting close to him really made him want to do something that he shouldn't have done. For some reason, Bojio reached out to touch the bridge of her nose when she saw the Almighty's expression. It was dangerous. F***CK, little spade, hurry and take a look. Fatty is starting to take off his clothes. From afar, Lin Shintao's laughter could not be more obvious. Even though she didn't understand what was so good about Fatty's naked body, it was better than dealing with the Almighty. Hence, she ran. Before she ran, she didn't forget to turn to allow the storyboard director to leave. The storyboard director couldn't tell what was strange about Big Spade after seeing the photos of the Almighty when he was young, but she couldn't pinpoint the exact reason. The news of her meeting her childhood pet seemed to be possessed, popping up every now and then, harassing Bojio. Chin-Emo reached out, tugging the youngster's collar. "How can Zhao Sampang look? You have to be so proactive." Fatty was speechless. "Hey, Chin-Emo, I'm right here. How can I not look? I'm so handsome. Haha, that stomach of yours is indeed interesting," Lin Chuntao added mercilessly. Fatty blushed. "What do you know it's called abs?" Bojio caressed her tummy before caressing the Almighty's. She glanced up with a mischievous smile. "Almighty Fatty, look, this is what I call abs." Chin-Emo glanced at the hand that suddenly appeared in front of his abdomen. Even though the hand was slender and beautiful, it was much smaller than his own. It was as fair as jade, causing his eyes to sink. This guy must be doing it on purpose. Touch him, or should he choose this position to touch? Huh. Chin-Emo didn't smile easily. Lin Chuntao watched from the side, an inexplicable chill running down his spine. Speaking of which, if you pluck fur from the tiger's belly, you'll either be killed or eaten by the tiger. How could little Spade not know such a simple logic? Zhao Sampang watched her actions as well. He felt as though his body was being humiliated, but he couldn't say anything. That scene was also very funny. Of course, the cameraman would not miss it. This kind of scene was also good for the ending. The main thing was that the young man's expression when he raised his chin was very arrogant and cocky. He gave off the vibe of a young master from the capital. Chapter 721. Yet, Chin-Emo asked the youngster in a low voice, "Is it nice to touch?" Bojio was still in a daze as she nodded seriously. "It's really nice to touch. Ever since she found out the Almighty was her pet, she didn't have to worry anymore, right? She had pounced on him so many times when she was young. It was only right to touch him." The youngster's eyes narrowed into slits as she smiled. Chin-Emo inched closer to her ear. "Huh." Lin Chuntao shook his head. Even though he wasn't sure why, he felt as though little Spade was doomed. But a certain someone was behaving like the young master of a rich family, smiling at Chin-Emo, smiling at the tiger. How could the tiger tolerate you? Little Spade, did you lose your intelligence? Next is the last mission. The filming crew watched as the sky darkened. "Let's have a swimming competition." Lin Shinao had already accepted it. As long as it wasn't gay content, he could accept it. Besides, he had already tried the terrifying death chamber. What else was there to be afraid of? He wasn't the one swimming. His captain was around. The storyboard director hesitated. Should Big Spade or Almighty Cheen be the one to reveal herself? The latter was hopeless. After all, Almighty Cheen was a formidable existence. She couldn't afford to offend him. She could only turn her head and look at the youth. Boat, Gio replied, I'm afraid of water and can't swim. Not even with a lifebuoy, I'll faint. With that, Cheen Mo glanced at the youngster, even though he hadn't gotten all the information. But Cheen Mo still knew the basics. Young Master Fu was indeed a good-for-nothing, but he had his own strengths, such as swimming. Cheen Mo's gaze deepened, his gaze sweeping past the youngster's face. Bo Gio allowed the Almighty to scrutinize her without a change in expression. In the end, she sighed. Besides, I'm injured. What kind of injury? Cheen Mo arched a brow. Bo Gio lifted her black t-shirt, biting down on her lips. Red mark, do you see it? Cheen Mo's gaze landed on the inch of fair skin. From his angle, the youngster's flat and fair abdomen was obvious. Even his belly button seemed to be different from others. It was small and white, not to mention the curve on both sides, which was enough to make people go crazy. He did not see any red marks. All he could see was that the guy in front of him was really asking for a beating. Cheen Mo reached out and pressed the youngster's shirt back to its original position. Right now, he only had two thoughts. First, he would never let the youngster undress in front of so many people, especially in front of the camera. Second, at night, he would let a certain someone touch him all over. Bo Gio couldn't understand why her puppy was glaring at her so fiercely. To think that she had predicted that there would be a swimming segment, so she had done something to her body just to avoid such a situation. All right, she forgot that the current dog-type pet still had the aloofness of the Almighty. Bo Gio smiled mischievously. He turned towards the storyboard director. I'll swim for our team. Chapter 722. Rao Rong chuckled. It seems like I'm the only one in this team. The captains of the three teams stood on the same level. The girls in the filming crew were overwhelmed by his handsomeness. Before they could react, Cheen Mo had already bent over, tugging off his clothes suavely. His black hair was messy and sexy due to the movement of his clothes. The lines on his body were perfect, especially the lines on his abdomen, which were clear and defined. Bo Gio watched the Almighty, reminded of the puppy she had had in her childhood. Back then, his hair had been just like that, soft to the touch. The moment Cheen Mo moved, a sharp intake of breath could be heard from the surroundings. Both the storyboard director and the main director were overwhelmed with excitement. How many fangirls would go crazy if this scene was broadcasted? According to Feng Yi, every time Cheen Mo showed his face, he had to pay by the minute. Every time he showed his upper body. Seriously, the filming crew could already see the skyrocketing viewership ratings. What was wrong with Almighty Cheen this time? He was so cooperative. Was it because the filming crew was too handsome? Bo Gio didn't move. She was still searching for a time to caress her puppy's hair. Pouncing wasn't possible since her puppy had grown up to become the Almighty. What kind of person was the Almighty? Bo Gio couldn't be clearer. That explained why she had always wanted to bring the Almighty home. From the looks of it, there wasn't anything wrong with her thoughts. Little Spade, you better control your gaze. Do you know how you're looking at Cheen Mo now? It's like a puppy looking at a bone, ready to pounce on it. I didn't believe the rumors I heard about you in the past, but now I realize how naive I was. You even brought your homosexuality into the production team. No, that's not right. There's something wrong with the production team. Are they helping you to seduce Cheen Mo? Since we're both assassins, even though you're still a little behind me, let me be honest with you. Cheen Mo is too straightforward. Don't waste your energy. It's useless. Once she heard his words, she stopped all thoughts of a puppy, because she finally remembered the most important thing. Confession. The Almighty confessed to her. The premise is, she is not a boy, but the Almighty was gay. Lin Chuntao observed the youngster's silent expression, thinking that he had been too harsh with his words. He coughed heavily. Actually, I'm just saying, there's no such thing as a straight man that can't be bent, right? It's all about looks. You're so handsome, you'll definitely have a chance. Bo Gio glanced at him gloomily. She didn't say a word as she watched him leap out of the sea. Lin Chintao was watching as well. As a man, even he couldn't take his eyes off Qin Mo when he stood up from the sea. Especially when the seawater slid past his lower abdomen and his black hair that was dripping with water droplets. It was enough to blow up a group of people. Chapter 723. What a joke. So what if he was crushed? When they had been young, he had pounced on them. But a true man shouldn't boast about his past. Besides, the Almighty wasn't easily crushed. The youngster stuffed her hands into her pockets, replying, "I'm not gay." Lin Chuntao replied seriously, "I used to believe that. It was bullsh*t to say that he wasn't gay. Have you forgotten how you took the initiative to kiss Qin Mo with an ice cream cone in your hand? Little Spade, there's a recording. Stop trying to deny it." Bo Gio ignored him since the Almighty resembled her puppy now. Especially when her hair was wet. It was even more so. She remembered. There was a time when she had been busy making a small keyboard and had forgotten that her pet had invited her to play. Her puppy hadn't spoken to her for 3 days. Even her parents hadn't been able to persuade him. His face was cold, as if someone owed him $1 million. Bo Gio had no choice but to sneak in. Speaking of which, that was when she had learned her wall climbing skills. She entered the bedroom with much difficulty, but didn't see anyone. At this time, as a smart kid who wanted to be a hacker in the future, once he heard the sound of water in the bathroom, he would definitely go to the bathroom to take a look. Who knew that as soon as she pushed open the door with the leaves on her head, she would be greeted by the sight of a dog pet with wet hair and snow-white clothes, squinting at her. He wasn't wearing any clothes. Bo Gio swore that she had only wanted to apologize and hadn't had any intention of peeking. In the end, her puppy hadn't intended to speak to her for 3 days. In an instant, it had become 10 days. Moreover, he had been looking at her as though she was a wolf. Bo Gio didn't know how many good things she had used to coax her puppy. In the end, her puppy had finally forgiven her, not forgetting to tug at her collar. As a lady, where's your restraint? Bo Gio hadn't been good at Chinese back then. Restraint. What was that? Her puppy had laughed coldly for a long time. If it hadn't been for his illness, Bo Gio felt as though her puppy would never have discovered her good side. Ever since then, she had kept her puppy. At that time, the two of them always leaned against each other to play games, and they cleared Super Mario. Of course, what he remembered the most was being forced to learn Mandarin by his pet. However, at that time, the Almighty didn't seem to hate girls that much. Why was he different now that he had grown up? Was it because he was cuter when he was younger? Very liked by the Almighty? Classmate Gio always had an obsessive self-confidence. Obviously, he had overlooked this point. No matter who it was, he would always be pounced on by a girl when he was young. They wouldn't think that the other party was cute. He felt that the other party was a bandit. When Qin Mo came up from the pool, he saw the youngster's confused expression. She was very close to him, and the light of the setting sun shone on the youngster's clean hair. Such a person should have been taught a lesson a long time ago. However, they weren't in a hotel, so it wasn't convenient for them to do anything. Qin Mo turned sideways, picked up the white towel on his head, and covered the youngster's face with it. I won't watch it anymore. The more he watched, the more he couldn't control himself. Chapter 724. Bo Gio removed the towel from her face, arching a brow. You're filming even when you're resting in the hotel? Little Spade, don't you watch variety shows? Lin Chintao was shocked by her question. What era was she living in to ask such a question? Bo Gio lowered her lids, tugging her collar. I don't. Then what do you usually watch? As a variety lover, Lin Chintao couldn't understand someone who didn't watch variety shows. Before Bo Gio could reply, Qin Mo walked over, his voice faint. Qin Mo walked over, his voice faint. Overbearing CEO, fall in love with me. MMH. Lin Chintao's face was filled with question marks. Qin Mo's smooth chin was still wet, his black hair still wet. He usually watches these types, such as Sweet Little Wife or Keeping an Esports Prince Charming. Bo Gio, Why did the Almighty have to remember her dark history so clearly? Lin Chintao glanced at the youngster's expression, patting her shoulder in a brotherly manner. It's true. The books you read reveal your true nature. The novels have been found from the bookshelf in Fu Jio's room. It wasn't convenient for Bo Jio to say they weren't hers, hence, she smiled suavely. I bought them for girls when I was chasing them. Chasing girls? Chin Mo paused in the act of putting on his clothes. His fingers paused for a moment before he started buttoning his white shirt slowly. His eyes were heavy and cold. Lin Shintao was still conversing with the youngster. Don't insult my intelligence. Who would give such books to a girl? Bo Jio replied lazily, me, before boarding the bus. She didn't seem to care if Lin Chuntao believed her or not. Lin Chuntao continued to educate the youngster. For variety shows, the best part is before and after bedtime. Don't think that you're really resting. There will still be cameras. As a hacker, she had to change her bad habit of hacking the cameras. Bojo listened to Lin Chintao, reminding herself to control her instincts. Fortunately, there was some good news. She was finally able to give her phone to everyone. The days without the internet were tough for esports players. The moment Zhao Sampang received his phone, he kissed the white phone. It must have been hard on you without Daddy to take care of you. The production crew. Fatai, come and take a look. We posted on Weibo, and some fans guessed that we're recording a show. Lin Shintao looked at the number of reposts on his official Weibo and stroked his chin. I feel like I'm going to be famous. Zhao Sampang pointed at one of them and said, look, someone is praising me for being handsome. The eyes of the masses were indeed sharp. None of you can. Almighty Fatty, you should see his nickname first. The youngster swept a glance at the screen and reminded Zhao Sampang, who was already a little dizzy, with a lazy voice. Zhao Sampang chuckled. Nickname? What's so good about nicknames? The point is, holy shit, what's the meaning of this? Who named them? His eyes were blind. Do you have any culture? I think he's quite cultured, huh? Lin Shintao laughed so hard he almost died in a car accident. Little did he know that at this moment, Almighty Xiao, who had never spoken, suddenly said, who are you sleeping with tonight? The person she was asking was Chin Mo. It's all because I'm too handsome, Zhao Sampang said as he walked. Lin Shintao unceremoniously kicked him. As fans, they loved watching their idols interact like this. It always felt very loving. Moreover, only after meeting the real person did he realize something. Spade Z and Almighty Chin were really handsome. Moreover, the actions of those two people could really stir up people's hearts. Let's take the simplest example. The youngster was originally walking in front with one hand in his pocket. Almighty Chin reached out to pull the strap of the youngster's bag. The youngster stopped, glancing over to hear what Almighty Chin was saying. Almighty Chin looked at the youngster, his lips curving into a smile. His smile was so warm that the fans couldn't help but want to take pictures. The production crew hadn't expected so many fans to camp at the hotel. Fortunately, they were quick to react and immediately called the hotel security, asking them to help control the scene. There were indeed many things to take note of when dealing with fans. Otherwise, it would be hard to explain once it made the headlines. Hence, even the security guards didn't dare to push them, using their bodies to block. The main director shouted until his voice was hoarse. With much difficulty, he managed to send the guests into the hotel. Fortunately, nothing untoward happened. But there was one thing. If the situation continued, tomorrow's filming would probably be shortened. There were benefits to being popular, but at the same time, there were unavoidable obstacles. F***CK, the shape of my hair. Zhao Sampang pointed at his head. It had indeed been squeezed a moment ago, and now it was standing straight, looking rather amusing. Lin Shintao couldn't bring himself to laugh. This is my last outdoor variety show. Bojiu arched a brow. Lin Chuntao gritted his teeth. Why aren't you asking me the reason? Bojiu remained silent, unwrapping a lollipop. Lin Chuntao couldn't help himself. In the past, I didn't think fans should be like this. What do you think? Zhao Sampang was the one who asked that. Lin Chinao couldn't describe the feeling he had. It was just that some people had told them to stop, but they still chased after them. When they moved, they would even bump into the production crew's assistant. It was a painful feeling. Zhao Sampang felt the need to console the youngster in the alliance group. Little Lin, pitiful, let me tell you, this isn't much. Look at how Little Spade was splashed with cola by the fans. Didn't he say anything? The moment he finished his sentence. In an instant, the surrounding temperature dropped by a few degrees. Bojio hadn't expected her almighty fatty to bring this up. She froze in the middle of her lollipop, turning towards Qin Mo, who was standing beside her. When? His cold and deep voice seemed to be able to send chills down one's spine. When Qin Mo's eyes weren't smiling, he gave off a devilish coldness. Zhao Sampang swallowed hard. What when? The fan splashed cola on me. Qin Mo's aura changed visibly. Zhao Sampang understood what he meant. Don't you know? It was at the start of the competition. Since Little Spade became the vice captain of Supreme Alliance, so that wasn't a fan. Bojio interrupted Zhao Sampang, her eyes fixed on Qin Mo. She knew the bottom line of a puppy. Qin Mo watched the youngster with a deep gaze. It was an oppressive aura. Zhao Sampang and Lin Chuntao wanted to hug each other to resist the coldness. Who's the mastermind? Qin Mo's voice rang out again. There was no warmth in his voice. Bojio didn't reply, since she had already dealt with him. If she said anything, her relationship with Old Bai would be exposed. It wouldn't be good if the Almighty found out she had hired someone to keep an eye on things, and guess what was going on. Qin Mo glanced at the youngster before tugging her collar, speaking slowly. You don't want to say? Then let me ask you, was there an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth? Of course. Bojio smiled. Then, everyone heard Qin Mo say, okay. His fingers released the youngster's collar. Lin Chuntao tilted his head. Is the main point of this matter about revenge? Yes, Qin Mo. You don't know how vengeful he is. Those who like him are completely bewitched by his face. Think about it. When he was playing with us, didn't he always dig holes for us? Zhao Sampang wouldn't let go of any chance to defame Qin Mo. It was important to maintain the image of a nemesis. Lin Chuntao held his hand. I think you're right. You have good taste. How are you feeling now? A second ago, they had been kicking each other, but now, they seemed to have found each other's soulmates. They were extremely concerned for each other. Lin Chuntao replied honestly, compared to Little Spade, my fans seem especially adorable. Bojio glanced at them before glancing at Brother Mo's erect back. She gave each of them a kick, preparing to start the fight. Zhao Sampang hadn't expected himself to lose to Qin Mo, but to lose to Little Spade as well. This was an insult to his handsomeness. Don't come over. If you come any closer, I'll tell others that you molested me. Zhao Sampang hid behind the sofa, pointing at her. Lin Chuntao was hiding as well. When he heard her words, he exploded. Fatty, can you be more shameless? No one will believe such an excuse. No, Captain, don't go. Save me. It's too disadvantageous for the two of us to fight. With your help, Little Spade will definitely lose. Rao Rong chuckled, lifting his legs to leave. His words were even more shameless to him. But when he turned the corner, he turned back to glance at the silver-haired youngster. It seemed like Qin Mo really cared about Spadesy. It wasn't his style to care for someone so much. After all, that man, he had never had any feelings. Time trickled by. After Bojio was done with the two of them, she pondered for a moment before heading to the room to look for the Almighty. That was how humans were. They didn't want to destroy the beautiful memories of their childhood. Bojio was an exception. Ever since she found out that the Almighty was her pet, she had to coax him. Bojio felt the need to coax him. Even though the Almighty had changed so much, there was definitely an awkward little button in his heart. Bojio understood. When she pushed the door open, she heard Qin Mo on the phone. His tone was calm as he said, "Go and investigate." Bojio paused for a moment before allowing the cameraman to follow her in. Qin Mo had just hung up and glanced up at her. "Come over." Bojio felt as though her pet was giving her a way out. She broke into a devilish smile. Unbeknownst to her, she had become more obedient in front of the camera. "I'm going down for a drink. You can reflect on yourself in the room." Chin Mo pinched the youngster's face, his gaze softening. Once you've thought it through, send me a WeChat message, understand? Bo Gio regretted that she couldn't be like when she had been younger, pouncing on him and coaxing him. She still had to reflect on herself. She would send the Almighty a message after playing a few games. Shout, that person obviously harbored ill intentions towards her pet dog. The Almighty was really slow in this aspect. Wasn't he gay? Chapter 726. On the other hand, the storyboard director was troubled by the content. Should they shoot it or not? If they did, they would have to include the previous scenes as well. But the previous topics were too sensitive and weren't suitable to be broadcasted. But through this incident, the filming crew understood. Some people in the production team also understood that there was a reason behind the Coke splashing incident. In the past, they had always felt that the entertainment industry was full of twists and turns. But now, they realized that as long as you were the center of attention, you would be pitted against. Almighty Chin's attitude was obvious as well. He was protective. The storyboard director took a moment before deciding to keep the part where Almighty Chin pinched Little Spade's face since it was too loving. The rest could be edited out. The youngster noticed them, arching a brow. Why aren't you following Brother Mo? I'll stay and film you. The storyboard director felt as though she was turning into a Spade fan, wanting to give a youngster more screen time. Bo Gio rejected them decisively. Hurry and film Brother Mo. With you guys around, Almighty Shao won't dare to do anything to him. The storyboard director. There will be someone filming, the cameraman interrupted. Bo Gio smiled. That's good. The storyboard director couldn't help asking, what do you think Almighty Shao will do to Almighty Chin? His gaze is so obvious. What do you think? Bo Gio asked. The storyboard director coughed. Bo Gio took a moment before breaking into a smile. But he won't have a chance. Why? Bo Gio arched a brow. He isn't Brother Mo's type. Was she going to expose Almighty Chin's ideal girlfriend? The storyboard director's eyes lit up. What type does Almighty Chin like? Someone as handsome and aggressive as me. Bo Gio leaned back, her long legs crossed as she opened the Hero app on her phone, a mischievous smile on her face. The storyboard director. Should we broadcast this part? The cameraman asked his colleague. The storyboard director held her forehead. We can't broadcast it. It'll attract haters. It's fine. I have a lot of haters. Bo Gio arched a brow at the two of them. Do you want to play Hero? I'll carry you guys. The reason why the production team was so excited when they heard that they were going to invite an esports god was because the entire production team had been addicted to playing games recently. The youngster's question. The cameraman was obviously shaken. The storyboard director replied solemnly, I'm still working. It's mainly because you're so dark-skinned. What's there to be proud of? Playing games with the guests is also considered work. The cameraman sat down and asked, which area are you from? Hey. The storyboard director insisted. The cameraman said, did you forget what team has said about us? 10,000-year pit. The storyboard director's attitude changed instantly. This episode is mainly about esports. How can there be no gaming scenes? Let's film Spade's hand speed. Come on, let's go. The little assistant didn't expect that the important task of filming would fall on her. However, looking at the people who kept their heads down and swiping their phones, she always felt that some people could only be truly understood after interacting with them. For example, the young man didn't talk much, but he could make people feel comfortable around him. It was completely unexpected. Even Almighty Chin was the same. He had thought that such a great god would not be easy to approach. So much so that they were a little afraid. But now, it seemed that although Almighty Chin was cold, he would never make things difficult for the production team. For the first time, they had the desire to do something well. While bringing happiness to everyone, they also wanted to tell the fans what these Almighties were like. The people they liked were truly wonderful. In contrast to the addicted gaming in the room. In the hotel restaurant, the decor was elegant, and there was someone playing the piano. Ever since Almighty Shao had said that on the commercial bus, the production team really wanted to dig deeper. National champion Almighty Shao and MVP Almighty Chin. What exactly was the relationship between the two of them? But that was just a thought. The main director called. asking them to film something else and not disturb their conversation. At this moment, the production team finally realized the two people sitting inside. One was young Master Qin from Jiang City. The other was young Master Xiao from Lin City. They weren't just rich, they were also powerful. Simply put, if you looked at esports, both of them had a red background. I have an answer to the question you asked me previously. Some people who often live under pressure might have a second personality buried deep in their body after experiencing certain things. The things they like would change. This is the information. You can take a look. Qin Mo's gaze fell on the folder that the other party handed over, but he didn't say anything. Almighty Xiao took a sip of wine. This time, who are you investigating? Nobody. Qin Mo tilted his head and lit a cigarette. His slender fingers held it, and a few images of the youngster flashed through his mind. No, that didn't seem like the reaction of the second personality being stimulated. But if it wasn't the second personality, how could he explain the information that Fatty had given him when he was in America? A person who had never touched a computer. Suddenly, he knew hacking skills. A person who used to frown when he saw a game. He just stayed in the hospital, and when he came out, he became the rookie king of Zone C. Other than the stimulation of the second personality, there was no logical way to explain it. Qin Mo's eyes deepened. His face couldn't be seen clearly in the smoke. There is another situation that I am still researching. While I think it is possible, I will call you. But I also have something to ask you. Qin Mo raised his eyebrows. What? Is your hand really fine, or did you come back early for some reason? When Big Brother Xiao asked this question, Lin Fan's expression changed. The smoke became much thinner. Qin Mo flicked his cigarette. Find out more about the enemy? No need. Xiao placed his glass down and stood up. But we both know that if your hand isn't healed, Supreme Alliance will never be able to defeat Xiangnan. Qin Mo took a puff of his cigarette, but didn't say anything. The conversation between the two of them ended there. In the room, Bo Jiu felt that she had killed enough, and it was time to remind the Almighty. She opened WeChat. Brother Mo, you can't drink until you're full. Do you want a barbecue? After listening to the voice message, Qin Mo reached out to extinguish his cigarette. Hungry? MH. Being hungry wasn't a big deal. She was more worried about what someone would do to him. There was something in Qin Mo's voice. Come down. All right. Bo Jiu paused. Where's Almighty Xiao? Qin Mo arched a brow. Why are you concerned about him? Aren't you drinking together? Qin Mo replied. I've finished. Bo Jiu was satisfied with his answer. She knew her puppy wouldn't be Almighty Xiao's type. She kept her phone and stuffed her hands into her pockets as she headed downstairs. Qin Mo's gaze didn't leave the screen. If it really was a second personality, what if it suddenly disappeared? What would happen? Qin Mo thought about the possibility. Qin Mo tightened his grip on his glass. Even his breathing seemed to stop for half a beat. He wouldn't allow that to happen. The lights dimmed, and the piano music in the dining room changed. The moment Bo Jiu came down, she saw that the cameraman hadn't followed them in. He was standing there. Did that mean that the Almighty and Almighty Xiao had been alone? She arched a brow and walked forward. There was a knife and fork on the table, along with a bottle of red wine that had been soaked. Bo Jiu walked over and picked up the bottle, preparing to pour herself a glass. Qin Mo held onto the youngster's wrist. It seems like someone hasn't reflected deeply enough. I was wrong. The 3 words were insincere. That attitude. Qin Mo glanced at her and pushed the steak over. Finish this and head upstairs to sleep. Bo Jiu was really hungry. She ate the meat and didn't forget to ask about the enemy. What did you and Almighty Xiao talk about? Qin Mo glanced at the youngster's side profile, his voice slow. It's about a second personality. After some people suffer psychological trauma, they would become completely different from before. Even some of their preferences would change. The intelligent Bo Jiu wouldn't assume that the Almighty was telling her a story, but she wouldn't fall into his trap. If she did, it would be equivalent to admitting that there was something wrong with her. She continued to eat the beef, her lips lifting. It sounds interesting. I thought you would talk about gaming, but it's about psychology. The world of a bookworm is always so profound. The formation of a second personality will affect a person to a certain extent. Chin Mo removed the wine glass, but didn't end the topic. Instead, he glanced at Bo Gio with a deep gaze. For example, what you were good at in the past would become good at in the future. What you weren't good at in the past would be stimulated by certain things. It wouldn't be interesting because the second personality isn't the main personality. Is it interesting to have information? Bo Gio couldn't understand why the Almighty's aura had turned cold, but her instincts told her. The so-called second personality was definitely related to her. The Almighty had already started investigating her. Perhaps it was because she had been caught red-handed in the convenience store. Regardless of the situation, it was only a matter of time before the Almighty discovered her secret. Bo Gio took another bite of the steak. It's interesting to exist. Is that so? Chin Mo's voice turned colder. Bo Gio chuckled. Yes, the meal wasn't much. Mainly, Bo Gio wasn't sure how much the Almighty had found about her. He probably already knew that there was a huge difference between the current her and the past her. Hence, the next step was to investigate. Bo Gio narrowed her eyes. Fortunately, the cameraman didn't enter. Just as Bo Gio was about to ask the storyboard director to arrange another room for her, Chin Mo pulled her into the bedroom. Just as Bo Gio was about to ask the storyboard director to arrange another room for her, Chin Mo pulled her forcefully into the bedroom. A door separated the filming crew. There was a camera in the room. At this moment, the guests were free to do whatever they wanted. Bo Gio hadn't expected that the Almighty wouldn't even do anything. He only said 2 words to the camera, sleep. He immediately pulled a towel over and covered the camera. Chapter 728. Before Bo Gio could pull herself away, she was pulled into the pleasure. He wasn't even 18 years old. Her body couldn't resist his seduction. She didn't have the ability to resist. Besides, that face reminded her of the first time she had pounced on her pet. Messy black hair and a different pair of eyes. It wasn't a woman. Even a man wouldn't be able to escape. He knew she couldn't resist his seduction, but he still used this trick. Bo Gio raised her arms, circling Chin Mo's neck. Her lips inched closer, not hesitating at all. Chin Mo lifted his thin lips. The moment he kissed the corner of the youngster's lips, a sharp gust of wind blew. It was a beautiful capture and suppression. Their positions swapped. The youngster's arms were by Chin Mo's side, her gaze lowered. Brother Mo, you should know that even if I have a reaction, it's just a physical reaction. It doesn't mean anything. With that, Bo Gio lifted her hands, pulling Chin Mo's white shirt up. She wanted to stand up. Chin Mo held on her wrist, his black hair falling down. He seemed to be smiling, but there was a hint of coldness in his voice. Why don't you have such a high resistance towards others? Bo Gio was aware of the Almighty's skills. If she were to reject such an Almighty, their relationship would fall to the freezing point. But she had to continue. Her identity as a girl would be exposed. But the Almighty had been trying to turn her gay. Shouldn't you take responsibility for flirting? When Chin Mo glanced up, he didn't give the person in front of him any chance to regret. He pressed the person's hand onto his burning hot spot. He watched as the youngster's face flushed red and her shoulders trembled. Chin Mo smiled again, looking as dangerous as a devil. His teeth were white and elegant. Didn't you say it was easy to touch, mate? In the entire world, the Almighty was probably the only one who could behave like this. Even though he said it, his hands were doing that kind of movement. Bo Gio couldn't control the rising temperature on her face. Chin Mo arched a brow. Why aren't you being straightforward? Gio, men don't really care about this kind of thing. What do you think, especially good friends? Even good friends don't do such things. Bo Gio bit down on her lips, her ears turning red. She wanted to pull her hand away. However, Chin Mo wasn't willing. Even the heat of his breath was a little scorching. There was only the reflection of a youngster in his deep eyes. Is that so? It was a word that was not in his consciousness at all, but it made this man even more irresistible. It was a very strange feeling. Bo Gio had never experienced it before. He could control a person's breathing and even the look in their eyes. She could clearly see her own shadow swaying in that person's pupils. She could also see Chin Mo that no one else had ever seen before. That handsome face that could move one's heart was dyed with asterisk, asterisk, asterisk at this moment. And when his black bangs hung down, it was even more sexy that it was difficult to pull away. Apart from the sounds that made people blush, there was also this person's aura and that scorching sensation. Bojio felt her palms burning hot. When he came back to his senses, he saw a pair of extremely black eyes. Your skills aren't that good. Chin Mo lifted the corner of his lips. You don't look like the legendary little prince of the nightclub. The only person who could dig up her dark history at this moment was the Almighty. Bojio wanted to avoid that person's aura, but she realized that the sandalwood scent could spread. She glanced over. You're just a nightclub nouveau riche. Chin Mo paused. He couldn't help but laugh, a certain part of him becoming more energetic. Do your job properly. Brother Mo, do you confess like this to everyone you meet? Bojio was a lady after all. She couldn't handle it, her face turning redder. Chin Mo leaned towards the youngster's ear, his gaze as dark as the night. He said something that didn't seem like something he would say. Only you. Because I want you too much. I want to lock you up and do whatever I want to you. I want to hear your hoarse voice begging for mercy, or perhaps, like now. Bojio trembled when she felt the boiling heat. Her thin lips were kissed. Her breath seemed to have been snatched away. Her mind was blank. Her heartbeat was so loud it made her tremble. Bojio could feel the numbness rising from her tailbone. She felt like she had lost all her strength. It seems like you don't dislike me. That magnetic smile, accompanied by the kiss, brushed past her ear. There was also the lingering scent of musk and the steaming breath. Even the hand that was pressing down on her wrist began to move downwards. It brushed past her waist, followed by her abdomen, kissing through the uniform. Just as it was about to move to between her legs, Bojio widened her eyes in shock. A crisp slap. The dissonant sound rang out at this moment. It was extremely piercing. Chin Mo didn't look at the back of his hand that was red from the slap. Instead, he lowered his lids, looking at the youngster who was still flushed. Bojio replied, "Sorry, I don't need it." She stood up immediately. This time, besides her speed, Chin Mo paused when he heard the two words. This was the response he didn't want to hear the most. As a criminal psychologist, he knew when a man was the easiest to be flirted with. That was why he used such a method to turn a person gay. Chin Mo turned sideways and looked at the closed bathroom door. It was like a chasm that couldn't be crossed. The clear sound of water flowing could be heard. Bojio watched as the thing in her palms was washed away. She glanced up at herself in the mirror. After washing her hands with the hand sanitizer, she washed her face. Just a little more. Just a little more. The Almighty. Bojio pressed her head against the mirror, catching him off guard. If she had gone any further, her secret would have been exposed. Her thoughts were in a mess. Bojio knew very well that no one could make her do this. It was really messed up, but the Almighty thought she was a blue child. He even took the initiative to flirt with her. Bojio narrowed her eyes. This couldn't go on. She had to think of a way to turn him back. She had to turn him back. Bojio rubbed her brows, glancing at the cigarette and fire that the Almighty had placed in the bathroom. She pulled it out and lit one for herself. It was a handsome pose, the silver strands of hair falling down, contrasting with the smoke. Chin Mo thought the youngster wouldn't be able to accept what had just happened and would hide in the bathroom. When he pushed the door open, he realized he was wrong. From his face, he didn't seem to be bothered by what had just happened. This was something Chin Mo had been interested in previously. But now, his heart seemed to be pierced by something. The media that said he was cold-blooded should take a look at him. He was good to you, but he wasn't affected by you. Chin Mo didn't walk over. How long do you intend to stay here? Bojio averted her gaze, muttering, You have to give me some time to smoke after the deed. Chin Mo's chest was starting to hurt. When he heard those 3 words, it was really... He glanced at the youngster who didn't play by the rules. I'm the one who should smoke after the deed, not you. Bojio didn't reply, thinking that she would get back at him sooner or later if she had the time. Chin Mo pulled her out. Explain to me, you're just a high school student. how did you know about the word after the deed? Aren't I a little nouveau riche from the nightclub? Bo Gio didn't like to smoke, but she did have one thing in mind. Brother Mo, don't do something like this again. Chin Mo's fingers paused, the light in his eyes dimming. Then, he tilted his head and lit a cigarette. His actions were completely different from hers. It was just that there was not the slightest bit of smoke or fire aura around him. He was very cold. He wasn't talking. At this moment, someone knocked on the door. It was Lin Chintao's voice. Hey, is Little Spade asleep? Do you want to have another round? Bo Gio was glad that someone had come to break the ice, but she didn't want anyone to see the Almighty like this. She opened the door and was about to agree, but when she turned around, her gaze fell on that red streak. She turned around to ask Lin Chuntao about other matters. Lin Chuntao asked, "What do you want this for?" "I was selling coconuts at noon. My knee is injured. I need to apply some." Lin Chuntao shook his head. Soft skin and tender flesh. In reality, ever since Bo Gio had left, Chin Mo's mood had changed. The air in the room seemed to have been sucked out. Chin Mo reached out and buttoned his shirt back, one button at a time. But the longer he did, the colder his gaze became. It was so heavy that he looked as though he had been abandoned. What a ridiculous description. No one would have thought that almighty Chin, who was adored by millions of fans, would be abandoned and rejected by someone. When he raised his head, there was no trace of emotion on his face, but the back of his hand was burning. He glanced over, realizing it was red. But the feeling didn't matter to Chin Mo, because of the youngster's words. Brother Mo, don't do what you did today again. Chin Mo knew that the fact that she could say such words so calmly meant that she really didn't like him. Perhaps she was against it. Chin Mo's fingers tightened. His black hair fluttered in the wind, making it hard to see his expression. The night sky outside the hotel was dark. It was so dark that no one knew what was happening. Vaguely, she could hear a very pleasant bass voice. Chapter 729. Wait a minute. He seemed to have sensed the commotion nearby. He turned and hid in the corridor, his back pressed against the wall as he watched the two of them with his dark eyes. It doesn't seem convenient for you to speak there. It's really inconvenient. There are cameras everywhere in this show. The man chuckled and wanted to say something. However, for some reason, the young man who was walking away suddenly stopped and lifted his eyes to look in his direction. What is it? Lin Chintao arched a brow. Boju took a step back. Hey, Little Spade, I'm talking to you. What is it? Lin Chintao asked. Bojio's gaze deepened as she lifted her thin lips. Nothing, my eyes were blurry just now. Tell me, did your eyes get myopic from all the gaming? You're so paranoid, Lin Chintao said before he could finish his sentence. Boju stuffed a hand into her pocket, a light smile on her lips. Just treat it as me being paranoid. There seems to be someone. She hadn't seen wrongly the figure that had flashed by, but it was strange. Why had he avoided them? And he paced over there. It was empty. Lin Chuntao patted her shoulders. What do you mean? You must have seen wrongly. MMH. Bojo ran her fingers over the wall, her gaze deepening because of the yellow sand. Besides, there were footprints on the floor. Even though it was faint, no one had said such a thing. She wouldn't believe it. Besides, he was wearing the team uniform. Clearly, everyone here and everyone's uniform was different. For instance, she and the Almighty were both from Supreme Alliance. The other two were the same. What exactly was his secret? Why was he avoiding them? Bojo glanced up, glancing at the naive Lin Chintao. Let's go get the Yunnan spray. Let's go. I thought something was wrong with your reaction. Let me tell you, we were playing the escape room earlier. In order to protect you, I've been enduring the terrifying visual impact. Now, my mind is especially sensitive. You really can't provoke me anymore. Be careful that I don't faint in front of you, Lin Chuntao said shamelessly. Boju arched a brow. Then I have to thank you for your protection. Sure. The noisy voices became softer and softer as the two of them left. What's wrong? The ringing on the phone pulled the man's attention back. After the youngster was far away, the man walked out of the darkness with his phone in hand. His eyes were dark. Nothing. I was almost discovered. Discovered? The person on the other end of the phone stopped typing. It's just a misunderstanding. The man looked up, and all the light shone on his face. The gentle outline of his chiseled facial features, every smile carrying a sense of leisure. Who else could it be other than the recently returned Rao Rong? Be careful, especially when facing Chin Mo. Don't be careless. Rao Rong lifted the corners of his lips. I'm no longer who I used to be. Of course I know how to deal with it. That's good. You can go now. It's time for us to make a comeback. He pressed the space bar. A faint Z shape appeared in the man's eyes. Rao Rong lowered his lids. It seems like you have thought of a way to deal with Chin Mo. But who exactly spoiled our plans during the maiden sacrifice? She actually didn't take action just because of your hypnosis and incitement online. I'm still investigating. His fingers paused. Rao Rong arched a brow. Honestly, I thought you were the one who started the live stream to let everyone see how much the world needs to be destroyed. I never expected it to be you. Regardless of who it was, the person who spoiled our maiden sacrifice won't be able to escape. Do you think I won't be able to find that person with my abilities? Rao Rong chuckled lightly. I didn't mean it that way. I still believe in your hacking skills. All right, the banquet is about to start. It's time for the person at the top of the pyramid to have a taste of being stepped on. Besides, there's something we can use against Chin Mo. What is it? Rao Rong leaned against the wall, his lips still curved. From afar, he looked harmless and handsome. The new MVP, the vice captain of Supreme Alliance. Chin Mo cares about him. The other party listened to the information while searching for the youngster's information. With a laugh, he said, Fujio, an eldest son chased out by his family, a useless person who doesn't know anything other than gaming. Why do you think Chin Mo cares about such a person? You will have to ask Chin Mo about that. Rao Rong's gaze was as dark as the night. I'm just telling you that this person holds a special place in Chin Mo's heart. Perhaps it's because of his gaming skills. The voice on the other end turned cold. If that's the case, it seems like we really have to meet him. Let's see what's so worthy of Chin Mo's efforts. There's a camera in front. I'm hanging up. Rao Rong watched as the person ran towards him, keeping his phone calmly, stuffing a hand into his pocket. The storyboard director finally slowed down when she saw him, heaving a sigh of relief. Almighty Rao, I finally found you. I thought I lost you. Where exactly did you go? I've been searching the entire floor. I was hungry, so I came out to find something to eat. I never expected the hotel to be so huge. You should know I have a poor sense of direction. Rao Rong chuckled lightly. Where's Lin Chintao? Didn't you say you were going to form a team? The storyboard director's attention was instantly diverted. Yeah, that's right. Where's Almighty Lin? Where did he run off to? Rao Rong didn't tell her where they had disappeared to. In fact, there were times when he didn't want to face a certain someone, especially after his return. The hotel hadn't provided any medication, but there were fans outside. He needed someone to divert their attention. Almighty Lin, do you want to prove how handsome you are? Bojio asked with a smile as she watched the scene outside. Lin Chintao was smart. I said, don't even think about throwing me out. I'm afraid the fans will faint from happiness. I'm not going out. Do you see that floor-to-ceiling window? Sit there and play a game. I'll help you count the number of people who took your photo and make a record. How's that? When Bojio wanted to convince someone, she had to cater to their interests. Lin Chintao wavered. Bojio continued. The main point is to tell Almighty Fatty that he isn't the most handsome person in the esports industry. You are. Do you really think so? Lin Chintao's eyes lit up. It seems like I'm really more handsome than Chin Mo. Bojio smiled faintly. Of course. Of course he couldn't be compared to the Almighty. Little Spade, you have such good taste. It's worth it to teach your brother. Lin Chintao walked towards the window. Where should I sit? I have to let them take a photo of my side profile. It's the most handsome and deep. That's how I became the coldest assassin. Bojio scanned her surroundings casually, multitasking. Over there, move slightly to the left. That's right. Sit down and don't move for a minute. They're already raising their phones to take a photo of you. Pay attention to your expression. Lin Chintao was indeed stylish, his fair skin, single eyelids, and high nose bridge as he stood sideways. The fans outside the hotel immediately crowded over when they saw him. The youngster made use of this opening to take a step back, removing the receptionist's cap and placing it on his head. Bojio's movements were swift, but it wasn't just fast. More importantly, every move she made was when the attention of others was elsewhere. His movements were as smooth as flowing water, extremely handsome. When she walked out of the hotel, she seemed to have transformed into a completely different person. Just like a magician, she walked towards the east. Lin Chintao was still nagging. "Little Spade, say something, how's my pose? Would it be more handsome if I lower my head, or F***, where is he?" Lin Chintao glanced left and right, but there wasn't any trace of the youngster. In reality, Bojio hadn't gone anywhere. She had hailed a cab to buy some pepper spray from the pharmacy before rushing back. She made good use of her time. On the other hand, Lin Chintao's hair stood on end as though someone had stepped on his tail. It didn't take more than 10 minutes. With the help of Lin Chintao, the Almighty, she had diverted his attention. Bojio didn't have to be deliberate when she returned. Wearing a receptionist's hat, she walked past the door and even helped someone park a car. None of the fans recognized the person in front of them as Spade Z. After entering the hotel lobby, with a flip of her hand, she returned the cap to the receptionist who had lowered his head and walked towards Lin Chintao. Nasi was still sending messages in the group chat. "Guess what little Spade did? Beat you? Good job." This was the reply of the most handsome on earth fatty. Lin Chintao said, "Shut up. He left me alone to face a group of fans. I'm worried that they will rush into the hotel and pounce on me. Since it's so difficult to stay here, you can leave." Lin Chintao replied, "No, I want to enjoy the feeling of being the center of attention for a while longer. The most handsome fatty in the world. Shameless. If you are so capable, tell me your coordinates. I will experience it with you." "He's downstairs. Hurry up and come down." Lin Chintao raised his head and saw the young man smiling at him. The fans outside the floor-to-ceiling windows shrieked when they saw Bojio. Lin Chintao was about to retort when he noticed the Yunnan Baiyao spray in the youngster's hands. "Where did you get this?" "Of course it's for sale." In order not to let the Almighty know she had been out, Bojio tidied her clothes. Lin Chintao pointed at the fans outside before pointing at the youngster's face, his mouth agape. "You can go out like this? You don't understand the skills of a bookworm." Bojio confirmed her appearance before arching a brow. "Back to the room?" Lin Chintao lowered his head. "I have an appointment with Sampang. I can't miss it." He wasn't going to admit that he was reluctant to part with the current situation. Bojio glanced out the window before breaking into a smile. "I'll head up myself, have fun." "Don't go. My captain might be coming down in a while. Let's play together and familiarize ourselves with each other's moves. You haven't played against him before. Do you remember the previous match?" Lin Chintao was clearly different from his usual self. "You were injured that day, but little Spade, if Captain was around, we would have won even if you weren't injured. The outcome would always be the same." Bojio paused, her voice calm. "You seem to have forgotten that our captain wasn't around that match." Lin Chintao fell silent, his mouth agape and dumbfounded. Bojio glanced at him. "How much do you know about your captain? In the entire esports world, who doesn't know that my captain loves me the most?" Bojio didn't have to listen to the rest of the sentence, since it wasn't going to be useful information. Just as she was about to leave, she heard his cool voice. "I've been waiting for him to come back, and now he's finally here." Bojio glanced back into the pair of bright eyes. "Little Spade, I'll show you my true ability in the National League." Bojio chuckled. "I'll be waiting. F***, I'll be the one waiting. Don't forget, Supreme Alliance still has to revive." Bojio heard the commotion behind her, waving her hands with her back facing him. With his tall and slender figure, even Lin Chintao felt that it wasn't without reason that so many people liked him. This was an era where looks were important. That's right, but there were doubts. Bojio wasn't prepared to say it out loud. There were two types of people she didn't want to interact with. One was the Almighty, who was filled with righteousness and wouldn't be affected by evil. Even if there was a black fog around him, it wouldn't touch him. The other type was Lin Chintao. Even his eyes were burning with hot blood, just like the members of Supreme Alliance. That was how they should be, shining in the esports arena. Even if one day their age and skills couldn't keep up and they became one of the masses. There were also people who couldn't help but recall their youth that had been burned by fire the moment they saw them. Bojo glanced down at the spray in her hands. After the National League, once it was over, she would give the Almighty an answer. Because she hadn't had such a past, she wanted to have it. Even though she knew deep down that she didn't deserve such innocence after falling into darkness, she still couldn't control herself. She still remembered when she was young. She hugged her favorite little keyboard, watching her mother's grave, the pastor singing. Everything seemed to be very peaceful. Her father's expression when he lowered his lids. Once a person loses someone important to them, they will become very unhappy. Gio, when you grow up, you must find someone who is very important to you. Do you understand? She lifted her head, confused. But didn't Dad say that as a qualified hacker, I can't tell anyone about my identity? Does Mom know about Dad's identity? What do you think? We're all adults like this? When they encountered a question that was hard to answer, they would ask a rhetorical question. She shook her head. Someone who really cares about you, even if she knows something about you, she will pretend not to know. There are too many hackers in this world. They only operate on the internet. In real life, they might be a bank clerk, a teacher, or even a teenager. You should know that you are the youngest among all the hackers. Daddy said that I'm too handsome. There's nothing I can do. Ha ha ha, that's right. You're too handsome. You should still remember the hacker's rules. I've memorized them all. The first one, I won't steal anyone's assets on the internet. Whoever you want to deal with, just say it. The last one, hackers don't just attack users. Instead, they study vulnerabilities through attacks, thereby greatly increasing the security of the system. Looks like our little nine's memory is indeed not bad. Dad. Don't you think we should add one more? Oh, add what? A hacker who is not handsome is not a good hacker. Ha ha ha. For the Bow family, we can add that. Dad, are we really leaving? I can't bear to. Can't bear to part with your little friend. He's my pet. Can't I bring him along? I have the money to support him. He has the money too. All right. Can I write him a letter before I leave? He might not be able to understand your handwriting. It's too ugly. I'll draw a picture. We have always had Lin Shi in our hearts. That's called telepathy. You really should learn Chinese. Do you remember what I told you? You are just the heir of the Bow family. All hackers have to abide by the rules. If anyone doesn't follow the rules, you will be the one to clean them up. If anyone tries to harm a hacker, you have to stand up immediately. Gio, you can have important people, but not friends. You have to remember, you are the young master of the hacker world. Bojo retracted her memory. She was already in front of the door. The storyboard director was standing outside. Big Spade, you're finally back. Even though she was standing in the corridor, she could feel the cold air in the room. It wasn't a good feeling. It's getting late. Go back to sleep. Bojo laughed lightly. Don't worry. When I wake up in the middle of the night, I'll expose one of the cameras for you to capture the Almighty's beauty. The storyboard director replied immediately, It's for the two of you. No problem. Bojo pushed the door open and entered. She wondered how many cigarettes he had smoked, but there was a hint of indifference in his handsome face. His posture could be taken out without any fear. She recalled the way the Almighty had seduced her. That should have been the first time he had lowered himself. She knew very well that after being rejected like that, no one would be in a good mood. Chinamo glanced up, reaching out to extinguish the cigarette. I thought you weren't coming back. You left so quickly. Other than being unable to accept it, you must have felt disgusted, right? No. Bojo was quick to deny this point. She felt that it wasn't right. The Almighty wouldn't believe her. After all, her reaction had been too huge. She used the Yunnan Bai Yao as evidence. I bought this for brother Imo Chinamo stilled. He had thought of many ways to reply, but this was the only one he hadn't thought of. Bojo didn't waste any time, grabbing his wrist and lowering her head to spray the redness on the back of his hand. Honestly, her actions weren't gentle at all. She was reminded of how gentle the Almighty had been when he had helped her blow dry her eyes and apply lipstick. As expected, her pet was still better at such things. Her actions were gentler. She had already finished spraying. Bojio seemed to recall something, leaning over suavely to blow on the back of his hand. Really, there wasn't a single bit of order. She didn't even know how to take care of others. Chin Mo watched the youngster's actions, feeling a sense of familiarity. It seemed like a long time ago, when he had been, because of this thought, a great pain attacked his brain, and even his temples hurt unbearably. That pain. Chin Mo pressed down on his head. Bojio wasn't sure what had gone wrong. She had never seen Chin Mo in this state before. His usually pale lips were frighteningly pale, much less his actions. Brother Mo. Bojio panicked. It was just like when they were young. She had cooked a meal, and he hadn't wanted to eat it. But later, for some unknown reason, while talking about her, he ate all the food, and after a while, he became like this. That was the first time Bojio had felt fear. And at this moment, that fear had returned. Chin Mo held on her wrist, his gaze deep. What are you panicking about? I'm fine. Indeed, it wasn't the same as before. But the thin layer of sweat on his forehead proved how painful it had been. His face was still pale, without a single trace of blood. Bojio thought to herself, this wasn't much different from when she had come to visit her relatives. It must have been unbearable, but she couldn't share her experience with the Almighty. Bojio stood up and took a bottle of mineral water, opening it for Chin Mo. After Chin Mo took a sip, his eyes lit up. Bojio asked, Brother Mo, what happened just now? Do you do this often? This is the first time. Chin Mo seemed to be thinking about something. His gaze swept past the youngster's side profile. Some images that he had never seen before flashed across his mind. He couldn't grasp them clearly, but he knew that the images were of himself when he was young. As a criminal psychologist, Chin Mo quickly realized that this wasn't normal. In the past, he hadn't taken his grandfather's words to heart. For example, when he was 4 to 6 years old, he didn't think much of it when he didn't remember it. But now, when it barged into his mind like this, Chin Mo realized a problem. He should be missing some of his memories. He glanced sideways at the youngster who was still sizing him up. The back of his hand seemed to have turned redder after being taken care of by the youngster. I'll get some ice. Bojio arched a brow. She was smart enough to realize that it wasn't normal to have a headache. But there were some things that they didn't say. It seemed to have become a tacit understanding between them. There's no need, Chin Mo said. Bojio wouldn't listen. This time, she brought the ice over and kicked the stool away. It wasn't cute at all. Sometimes, Chin Mo wondered what he liked about her. Chapter 730. Bojio glanced up at the Almighty's expression. Besides his handsome face, there didn't seem to be any negative emotions. Did that mean he had forgiven her? Bojio moved the ice away, lowering her head to spray the Yunnan Baiyao spray onto the back of his hand. She looked so serious that those who didn't know would think she was in the middle of a major operation. Chin Mo smiled, his chin dangling close to the youngster's head. He lowered his lids, his pale lips touching the furry vortex. That image, whether it was the posture or the feeling, it was very beautiful. If it wasn't for the fact that the internal camera was covered, the chief director would have lost his cool when he saw this scene from the front of the camera. It was a pity that not all scenes of true love would appear on the show, because there were always people from the production team around. The time when every team really went to sleep was not very early. At 1 a.m., all the lights in the room were switched off. It wasn't possible for Bojio to be unprepared for sleeping in the same room as the Almighty. Hence, she had a light sleep, only falling asleep at around 3 a.m. The next time she woke up, she was jolted awake by the light. She didn't know when she had gotten so close to the Almighty. A corner of the camera was exposed, facing her and the Almighty's faces. Bojio rubbed her eyes. Without a second thought, she covered the camera, leaned back, and continued to sleep. The production crew. Didn't they agree to expose a camera for them to capture the Almighty's beauty? That's good enough. The storyboard director consoled her colleague. Cut that scene and put it into the main film. It will definitely make the handsome fans bleed. The little assistant coughed. That little bit of broth isn't going to be enough. What else can we do? The storyboard director reminded them. Have you forgotten about the guest guessing and the secret room challenge? Be careful that Almighty Cheen and Big Spade don't expose the suspense in front of the entire nation. With that, the production crew thought about the day's events, leaving silently. Should we call them later? They have to wake up at 6 a.m. to continue filming. I heard that Almighty Cheen doesn't like to be disturbed. Who told you that? Big Uncle is at the Cheen group. I just told him that Almighty Cheen is coming to our show. He's such a reliable person that he almost jumped up. He even specifically told me that Almighty Cheen doesn't like to chat and doesn't like to have other people around during breaks. He told me to take it easy even if I'm doing a show. Don't worry, Big Spade is here. Wake him up and get him to call Almighty Cheen. It feels like Big Spade saved the entire crew. Everyone looked at each other in dismay. 6 in the morning. The sun had not fully shone in yet. Because of the phone's vibration, the youngster stretched out her fair arm. Her eyes were still closed, and her voice was lazy and nasally. Who is it? One word. The little assistant's heart skipped a beat. It's the production crew. It's time for the mission. It's time to wake up. Also, I'll leave the responsibility of waking the Almighty up to you. Big Spade, please, please. The voice on the other end of the phone caused Bo Gio to open her eyes. She glanced sideways at the person on her right. The thin rays of sunlight shone in, shining on the handsome and elegant face. His mixed blood features were clearly visible. His collarbone and arms were exposed outside the pure white blanket. Even his shoulders were perfect. This was the appearance of a puppy. It was better not to let anyone see it. Bo Gio lifted the blanket, her fair feet stepping onto the wooden floor. She was still holding the phone in her hand. Okay. Then she placed the phone in her pocket. It wasn't safe to take a shower at this time. She still had to change her clothes. She quickly changed in the bathroom. Bo Gio glanced at Cheen Mo on the bed. In the end, she still found him too handsome. Just as she was about to go closer, she heard his low and deep voice. It had the magnetism of a person who had just woken up. Why are you so close to me? Bo Gio paused. Why did he wake up at this time? Even if she wanted to do something naughty, she couldn't. Cheen Mo watched the youngster's slightly depressed face. He lifted the blanket and stood up. He was wearing black trousers and a pair of straight legs. His upper body wasn't wearing any clothes. The oppressive aura was stronger than usual. Bo Gio took a step back. Cheen Mo didn't say anything, but his next action confused her. He pulled her into the bathroom. Then the Almighty released her hand and unzipped his zipper. Bo Gio's eyes widened. Brother Mo, what are you doing? Didn't you see it? You're going easy on me. Cheen Mo didn't stop. He looked so handsome. He looked handsome just by going easy on her. Only the Almighty could do that. But why was he going easy on her in front of her? Bo Gio narrowed her eyes. On the other side, Cheen Mo arched a brow and said nonchalantly, Why? Didn't you say that good friends would go easy on each other the first time we met? Bo Gio laughed. Brother Mo, you have a good memory. I'm better than the wall-climbing student. Cheen Mo pulled his zipper up, looking handsome. He glanced over, his voice calm. It's your turn. Any other girl would have blushed at the Almighty's actions. I can't pee. I came to the toilet just now. Cheen Mo glanced at the youngster, brushing past her, his voice slow. Don't worry. I won't touch you before you get used to it. Get used to it. Bo Gio wondered how she could get used to it. Cheen Mo seemed to have read her mind. I'll bring you along when I pee, so you can watch a few more times. That way, your hands won't tremble the next time. Bo Gio, when it came to such matters, Bo Gio wouldn't be able to take advantage of him. Besides, the Almighty had always been a man of his word. Perhaps he would bring her along every time he went to the toilet. Once again, Bo Gio felt that the variety show was a huge trap phone he had dug for her. Compared to the other two teams, Bo Gio and Cheen Mo were much more efficient. In the other room, Rao Rong watched the youngster lying on the bed, hugging a pillow. He suppressed his patience, lowering his voice. Lin Chuntao, wake up. That guy acted as if he hadn't heard anything and turned over to continue sleeping. It was the one who jumped up and down last night and said to wake him up early the next day. In the end, he had already woken up half an hour ago. He woke this guy up again. Rao Rong chuckled. The temperature was a little cold. He took a bottle of mineral water and poured it towards the man's face, unafraid of the cameras. Lin Shintao was startled by the cold and cursed out loud. When he realized who was standing in front of him, he wiped away the water on his face and smiled, revealing his white teeth. Captain is really back. I wasn't dreaming. If I'm still here after sleeping for a day, then it must be real. After listening to that guy's unconscious words, Rao Rong's expression froze. But soon, he turned his back and didn't let the camera capture his face again. Did this guy really want him to come back? Rao Rong glanced sideways, glancing at the guy who was still hugging the pillow and mumbling to himself. His gaze deepened when the three teams gathered together. Zhao Sampang was still swaying back and forth. The crew knew it was too early to start the mission, but they had no choice as they were worried that more fans would appear and affect the filming. Hence, the earlier they started filming, the better. Fortunately, the duration of the show was almost up and the mission was full of explosive news. They just had to head to the last location and the episode would come to a perfect end. It's 8:10 now. We will reach our destination in an hour. Everyone, take a break. At this time, the filming was targeted. After all, they had just woken up, so everyone's enthusiasm for filming was not very high. Ever since they had boarded the car, Bo Jiu hadn't opened her eyes. Qin and Mo sat beside the youngster. Both of them were competing in terms of sleeping skills. In the end, in the image of the camera, the two of them were leaning against each other. Their hair was of different colors, but they were equally handsome. Of course, the youngster's head was slightly lowered, but that didn't affect the storyboard director's excitement. Along the way, almost all the guests had fallen asleep. Weibo was the first to wake up. In other words, ever since they posted the news yesterday, the commotion on Weibo had not subsided. A lot of people went to the production team's official Weibo to leave a message, wanting to see the photos and whether they could sell them to him. Due to the huge popularity, coupled with the fact that there were a lot of illegitimate fans following him everywhere, the production team decided to make a last-minute decision. They told some fans through their official Weibo that the final filming location would be at Lynching University. They told them to be careful and not to act blindly. This way, at the very least, the information would be transparent, and no one would use this point to lie about revealing someone's whereabouts. After seeing the news sent by the program team, the fans really exploded on the spot. Lin City's fans, in particular, were extremely excited. Everything he did before had nothing to do with esports. That mission, on the other hand, could not be separated from esports, because the mission location was an internet cafe near the university town. He wanted them to walk around the internet cafe and see how many people would understand what esports was like. When it was nearing afternoon, the filming was finally completed. The area outside was filled with fans. After watching Bo Gio and the others leave, the storyboard director laughed, turning towards the cameraman at the side. Wait and see. After the broadcast, they will all be extremely popular, especially Spade Z. As though to verify their reaction when they first saw Spade Z, the youngsters' fans were increasing at a visible speed. Even the station had sent an urgent notice, asking them to complete the post-production overnight and broadcast it a week in advance. Those who knew how to advertise knew what it meant to warm up. But this time, there wasn't a need to warm up at all. There were explosions everywhere. In fact, even the storyboard director hadn't expected the video to be so interesting after it was completed. From the youngsters' diss of the production team to meeting up with the Almighty and a series of subsequent actions, the passers-by started to turn into fans. Even those who didn't understand esports started to ask who the silver-haired hunk in the program was. Spade Z's fans continued to increase. Even though it wasn't as many as Qin Mo's, it was slowly becoming the most popular. When the program was nearing its end, it left people yearning for more, especially when a youngster had just woken up and rubbed his eyes, not forgetting to cover the camera. It was so adorable. Of course, that wasn't the main point. The main point was that the youngster had slept beside Almighty Qin. Countless fans took screenshots of that scene and used it as the background. It was so sweet, especially when they were sleeping. The youngster's head was leaning against the Almighty's shoulder. Both of them had their eyes closed, their lashes long and handsome. A fan commented, They're the best brothers in Supreme Alliance. When one of them isn't around, the other will definitely shoulder everything for him. Their faith is stronger than their relationship. He has an indifferent personality and became an almighty at such a young age. Yet, he is able to entrust his back to him. Even when they sleep together, they seem like two well-matched princes. That is Mo. She read the comment. Countless people left comments and reposted it. The relationship between princes is the most enviable. My almighty slept with my second almighty. What should I do? All right, he's so handsome. I can only give him my blessings. I hope they will never change and will always be together. After this program, the CP fans were even more enthusiastic about searching for the pink photos of Almighty Chin and the youngster. The more they searched, the more they felt that even their gaze was full of gay love. Well, I tell you that when I saw Almighty Chin suddenly lowering his head to complete the task with Big Spade through a piece of paper, I blushed. My mom was right next to me and asked me what was wrong. How should I tell her that the two people I like the most are finally together, and they are kissing each other so openly? I can't stop thinking about it. Let me be excited for a while. That scene caused a wave of excitement. The fans were also mischievous. I just want to ask Almighty Chin if he dares to kiss Big Spade without a piece of paper and directly kiss him. Like the program crew, the perfect CP Almighty assist. Based on my understanding of Almighty Chin, no one can force him to do something he doesn't want to do. Could it be that he doesn't resist being close to Big Spade from the bottom of his heart? Not only does he not resist, he is also declaring his sovereignty the whole time. Am I the only one who feels this way? I think the same as the one above. Also, did you see my Big Spade? He is so obedient in front of Almighty Chin. Also, how is this child so strong? He pushed a whole cart of coconuts by himself while the Almighty walked beside him leisurely. Big Spade even looked happy and didn't feel like he was at a disadvantage. What a dumb son of a landlord. The main thing is that when Big Spade woke up, he looked at the Almighty and then at the camera. At the end, he raised his hand. That expression of not knowing where he was so handsome and cute. He is even cuter when he is obediently beside Almighty Chin, like a little loyal dog. The more heated the discussion online, the darker Wu Zhan's eyes became in front of the computer. The more she watched, the more resentment she felt, until she saw the kissing scene at the end. Wu Zhan raised her hand, and with a forceful swing, the mouse and keyboard fell to the ground. Why? Why was she in such a miserable state now? That youngster could participate in the variety show with Brother Mo. Now, not only was she banished from the crime squad forever, she couldn't even see Old Master anymore. The Wu family had a lot of money and could let her do many things. She could even go overseas to develop her career. But Wu Zhan had never thought of letting this matter go. No matter how far she went, she had to maintain her outward appearance. This had always been her creed. She took a deep breath and stood up as well. She called for the servants to come up and tidy up. Miss, someone wants to see you. The Wu family's butler was much calmer than the servants. Even though there were so many broken things on the ground, he didn't have much of an expression. Wu Zhan glanced at him. I won't be seeing anyone for a while. Everything was gone. She couldn't accept it at all. The person said she came from the Fu Corporation and wants to talk to you about Fu Jiu alone. She believes that you will be very interested. Wu Zhan's eyes lit up when she heard that. Let her in. Yes, Mississippi. Less than 3 minutes later, a person appeared in the Wu family's living room. That person seemed to be in a bad mood recently, so she had to pay attention to her appearance. But now, she didn't have the money to pay attention to her appearance. But the marks on her eyebrows were still there. If she wasn't the mistress who interfered with Fu Zhongyi and He Honghua, who else could it be? You are? Wu Zhan hadn't seen her before. In Wu Zhan's heart, even rich people had their own circles. Be it her or Brother Mo. The person in front of them was nothing in their eyes. Sume naturally lowered her stance in front of Wu Zhan. Miss Wu, you must have forgotten that we attended an evening party. There were many people in the circle then, so my husband and I could only watch from afar. Fu Zhongyi. Wu Zhan lifted her eyes when she heard the name. Wasn't he the father of that glass man? Sume. Yes, I know Miss Wu has met with some trouble recently. Because of the same person, I can't enter the company, and my son's esports career is ruined because of him. Even if I go to hell, I will drag Fu Jio down with me. I believe Miss Wu feels the same. Wu Zhen arched a brow. No one in this world has the ability to drag me down to hell. Of course. I'm just making an analogy. Su Mei was indeed someone who had been in the business world for a long time. She was very perceptive when it came to catching someone's attention. But I have a piece of news that I got a private detective to investigate a long time ago. He said that Fu Jio's birth has a secret that Yi Honghua has been trying to cover up. As for what the secret is, I will need Miss Wu's help to find out. That's why I'm here today, to see if Miss Wu is interested in helping me deal with that person who should have gone to hell a long time ago. A secret at birth? What kind of secret do you think it is? Wu Zhen was obviously interested in this suggestion. Su Mei didn't give in. I will tell Miss Wu about this when we reach Yi Honghua's hometown. Don't worry, Miss Wu. I want that person to have a taste of falling into the abyss just like you. This secret is enough to ruin Fu Jio's reputation. He won't even be able to participate in esports competitions. Okay, Wu Zhen's eyes were full of venom. She had to admit that Su Mei's words struck a chord in her heart. Moreover, she knew very well that the enemy of her enemy could become a partner. People like Su Mei were still too young to use her. Wait until she knew what the secret was. She would kick this middle-aged woman away. Did she really think that she could use the Wu family as she pleased? The sky was changing outside. The only thing that didn't change was the popularity on Weibo. There were less than 2 days left until the revival match. But the fans' minds weren't on this. It was so sweet that they didn't know what to do. That show was too popular. It was the first time that a variety show invited esports players as guests. So the audience wasn't just fans. There was also the Sakura Stream team that had settled down here and was preparing to participate in the National League. These people don't look too bad. Looks are just for show. The competition isn't about that. Is that so? But I remember that you lost to these people on the Japanese server. What? It's them? One of them was short, a baby-faced blonde. The moment he heard this, he immediately went onto the television, his face pressed against the screen. Which one? Which one beat me the last time? The one lying on the sofa was also a handsome man, but he wasn't the same as the one from China. He arched a brow and pointed casually. MH, this one is especially talkative. And that silver-haired handsome youngster. Rumor has it that he became the first clear king of a region the moment he started playing. He even beat someone in Tokyo. It wasn't an injustice for you to lose to him. The baby-faced man glanced towards the screen, his finger pointing at Bojio's figure. Him? Uh-huh. The baby-faced man pouted. Just because he's older than me. That was true. The baby-faced man was the youngest member of Sakura Stream Team. He hadn't even graduated from junior high school and had become an official member. His ability wasn't just for show. His weakness was underestimating his opponent. Vice Captain, what do you think of the Spade Z? Mei Nan, who was lying on the sofa, turned around and asked the man who looked like he would never wake up. He was yawning, holding a comic book in his hand as he sat on the wooden floor. His eyes were clear. What? It's useless to ask, Vice Captain. When has he ever cared about the other team members? The baby-faced man wanted an answer in his heart, so he jumped over and pointed at the screen. Vice Captain, that one, the silver-haired one. What do you think of him? Hoshino glanced up, looking lazily at the direction he was pointing at. At this moment, the youngster on the screen happened to be in the secret room escape stage. Because of his extremely handsome skills, the scene that caused countless Spade Z fans to scream was reflected in Hoshino's eyes. But it was different from the others. Hoshino didn't just see his handsomeness. It was his brows, his light smile, the evil that could destroy everything between his lips. His movements were as smooth as flowing water, a gaze that couldn't be more familiar. Chapter 731. When this name rang in their minds, even their breathing became a little stagnant. Crack! The sound of the comic book falling on the floor and Hoshino's reaction stunned the youth. Vice Captain, what's wrong? Hoshino paused for a second, then took off his headphones and looked at the TV screen in front of him. His white shirt and beige sweater gave people a warm feeling. But those who were familiar with him could tell that Hoshino was different from before. Which team is this guy from? Hoshino pointed in a direction, and the young man just smiled, his eyes bright and teeth white. Ah, him? I think he's from Supreme Alliance, not Xiangnan. In the eyes of the Sakura Stream Squad, the only team that could be called a rival in China was Xiangnan. They didn't even need to use all their strength to deal with Xiangnan, let alone other teams. Hoshino looked down, his hair falling down, the ends sliding over the bridge of his nose. Supreme Alliance. Vice Captain is interested in them? The person lying on the sofa pushed himself up with one hand and jumped down from the sofa. The corner of his mouth was half-curved. Coincidentally, I'm also interested. Who's the one who defeated Little Cutie? I really want to see it for myself. Oh, right, they will be participating in the revival match this time. The youth was stunned. Watanabe, are you crazy? You want to go to the crime scene together? Do you know how many of our fans there will be? We are international, especially with your face that often broadcasts and participates in variety shows. Besides, Vice Captain won't agree to your request, which is obviously because you're bored. Okay. Hoshino looked away from the screen and interrupted the youth. Then he put one hand in his pocket and turned to walk towards the room. This was a way to avoid people seeing his expression. The youth and Watanabe were both shocked, pausing for a moment. Vice Captain, he agreed. The youth couldn't believe it. Watanabe was very happy. Ha, I can finally go out and play. I heard that the food in China is very delicious. I'm so bored in the apartment that I'm about to grow hair. Quick, go and see if we have any disguise clothes, especially masks, or we will be recognized. The baby-faced youth didn't understand. For some large activities, the vice captain would use the excuse of sleeping to refuse. Why did he agree to watch a small revival match today? Watanabe was smart, flicking his head. Didn't you see, Vice Captain, that Spade Z's? What? You seem to care a lot. Hoshino was indeed very concerned. That facial features and feeling were obviously Z. But the boy in the video was younger than Z. Or rather, Z when he was young. His hair color was also wrong. Z's hair was darker than everyone else's. Their clothes were also different. The Z he knew. She was used to wearing a hooded black trench coat, so no one could see her face. The youngster on the screen was obviously different. However, there was no mistaking the feeling of him looking at her with his brows raised. Z was good at disguising himself. How to find a real Z. This was the tacit understanding they had developed over the years as partners. He had to see that youth with his own eyes. To confirm something. Why did Z become like this? Chapter 732. The popularity of the show continued. There was a place where the television couldn't be seen. Han Susu was the trigger for the incident with the Han family. But the person who went in was her father. In this circle, this was normal. Han Susu's ability to accept it wasn't good. The Han family was investigated. All their assets were confiscated. How could Han Susu get used to such a life? But some people's brain circuits were different. Since she had no money, she became a waitress. Wasn't it written in novels that a poor girl would always meet her Prince Charming like this? Although some people didn't dare to have anything to do with the Han family, they didn't reject Han Susu out of respect for old madam. But Han Susu really thought that life was like a novel. A waitress didn't know how to respect customers at all. She behaved like the young mistress of the Han family, arrogantly looking at everyone. Of course, she didn't think she was wrong. She felt that this was her pride. When she was in a bad mood, she would tell everyone she met how heartless her grandmother was. She didn't know that the reason she could stand here now was because of old madam. The manager was really helpless against her. It wasn't easy to control her, giving him a huge headache. After all, Han Susu used to be famous. She came here to work so that she could meet those people again and get them to take her away. After all, with her beauty, she rushed upstairs with all her might. The manager stopped her. She felt that she was being reasonable. If you continue like this, leave. This was what the lobby manager could no longer hold back and blurted out. Han Susu's face turned pale. She pinched the edge of her skirt, thinking that she couldn't leave this place. Suddenly, a voice came from behind. It was low and had a unique indifference. "All of you leave." Han Susu turned, her face filled with surprise. Brother Qin. She really didn't expect to see someone she knew again. She wanted to pounce on Qin Mo. Qin Mo stuffed one hand into his trouser pocket and took a step back. His thin lips curved up, but there wasn't a trace of warmth in his eyes. "Inciting people to splash coke and taking the lead to question me online. When you did all these things, didn't you think that I would find you?" Han Susu froze. I didn't. You do." Qin Mo took a step forward and lowered his voice. "Why did you do all these things?" Han Susu clenched her fists. "That's because he's a disgusting gay. I've spent so much money to support him, but he's still pretending to be aloof. His official fans are the same, paranoid and wary of me. What the hell is this? Big brother Qin, don't be fooled by him. He's by your side not because he wants to be your brother, but because he wants to be with you. If Sister Wu didn't tell me, I would still be in the dark." "It's her again." After Qin Mo asked the question he wanted to know, he straightened his body, his voice slow. Han Susu felt that something was wrong. Qin Mo's voice drifted over slowly. "Who told you I wanted him to treat me as a brother?" Han Susu opened her mouth. Qin Mo glanced at the manager beside him. "Fire him." "Yes, President Qin." After hearing this, Han Susu screamed, "Brother Qin, you can't do this to me. My brother is so good to you. You will suffer retribution for treating me like this." Her voice echoed in the lobby, extremely piercing. Qin Mo didn't even bother with her. Chapter 733. Deputy Zhang, who was waiting outside, reached out to open the car door when he saw Qin Mo. The moment his young master alighted, he had asked him about the results of the investigation before rushing over to look for Qin Mo without taking a break. The unknown malevolence was buried in his eyes, his entire aura cold. "Send the people back from the Wu family." Qin Mo sat on the sheepskin seat, his handsome face faintly discernible in the darkness. The Wu family was different. Deputy Zhang placed his hands on the steering wheel, glancing back with uncertainty. The Wu family should have restrained themselves. With old master around, sending the people back seemed send. Without any unnecessary words, his face was as exquisite as porcelain, the contours clear. It was a Qin Mo that was rarely seen. Deputy Zhang knew that under normal circumstances, no one would be able to change his young master's decision. "Are you still going to keep an eye on Miss Wu? Are you going to tell young master who she interacted with and what she did?" Qin Mo shut his eyes, crossing his legs. Yes. Deputy Zhang understood that Miss Wu's actions had probably crossed his young master's bottom line. Otherwise, he wouldn't have treated an old friend in such a manner. Just as he was deep in thought, a voice came from the back of the car. "Head to the Han family after you're done. Give old Madame Han what she needs." "Yes, young master." Dealing with Han Susu, but not implicating old Madame Han, was his young master's principle. Old Madame Han was a person worthy of respect. Those who came from a military knew that. At the same time, Deputy Zhang knew that old Madame Han's greatest need was money. The Han family had failed, and their accounts were in a mess. Old Madame Han was such a righteous person, but if her descendants didn't live up to her expectations, she wouldn't be able to enjoy her old age. Deputy Zhang knew that it wasn't a good time to transfer the money. The money that young master withdrew was enough for old Madame Han's living expenses. Hence, he stopped the car and sent them to the residence. The moment they entered, the sound of a teacup shattering could be heard. Han Susu shouted, "In the past, your words carried weight because you wanted us to rely on your connections. Now that the Han family has fallen, don't even think about controlling me. You old hag, you have a dark heart. I'm your biological granddaughter. How could you harm me like this? I don't even have a job now. What's wrong with you going to the Qin family to say a word?" Old Madame Han supported herself with a walking stick, but her old eyes weren't muddled. It was this gaze that made Han Susu feel disgusted. She looked like she was about to hit the old man. Adjutant Zhang twisted her wrist, and pushed her away, looking at old Madame Han. Old Madame Han shook her head. I'll let you see a joke. Please don't say that. Adjutant Zhang respected old Madame Han very much, so he behaved like a soldier and was very polite. Old Mrs. Han shook her head again. Han Susu was afraid that the person beside China Mo would do the same thing to her, so she hurriedly hid to the side. Adjutant Zhang didn't care about her at all, taking out a thick envelope. Young master instructed me to pass this to you. Young master said that when you were young, you would always cook for them. In the future, when old Madame Han is in a difficult situation, she can go to the North Courtyard. There are all old people like you there. It would be great to live together. It was a straightforward retirement arrangement. Chapter 734. Please keep it. Deputy Zhang raised his hand and saluted. When he walked past Han Susu, his gaze was cold. Han Susu was smart. She knew what the envelope was. It had been a while since she had seen such a thick stack of cash. She reached out to snatch it. Old Madame Han looked at her and slammed the wooden stick. Beast! Han Susu didn't think she was wrong. She snatched the money and sneered. Old woman, that's all you can do. You didn't save me previously. Take this money as atonement. Han Susu scolded the old woman. With this money, she could continue to squander. She wouldn't have to return to this empty shell again. The old woman wanted to use money to get her brother out, so she could do it herself. This person wouldn't be able to harm her anymore. She was going to have a feast today. All right, she had to buy a dress. It had been a long time since she attended a gathering in the circle. This time, she had to be beautiful. At this moment, Deputy Zhang was sitting in the car. He watched as the figure ran further and further away. He turned and asked Qin and Mo, Young master, do we need to no need? Qin and Mo held a pen and wrote a check. His voice was calm. This is for the old woman. Let her spend it. Once she gets used to it and can't quit, someone will punish her. Deputy Zhang looked at the check. He instantly understood why young master had asked him to write an envelope. In this world, there was a cause and effect for everything. For Han Susu, if she knew her place, she might be able to survive. But if she didn't, she would be a joke in this circle that valued status and background. That person had snatched her only relative's money to do the most vain thing. The price she had to pay was not even her bones. Deputy Zhang felt a chill run down his spine when he thought of this. He asked tentatively, did young master predict this from the beginning? Dealing with people like this was really killing without spilling blood. Qin and Mo glanced up at him. I didn't ask her to snatch her grandmother's money, but you expected it. Deputy Zhang looked up. To the young master, it was easy for him to see through a person's mentality. Moreover, it wasn't difficult for him to analyze a person's actions based on their mentality. This was also the reason why the Huaxiao organization was afraid of him. It had been a long time since the young master had dealt with someone like this. This made Deputy Zhang think that the young master only knew how to play games apart from business matters. In fact, apart from him, no one knew how powerful the young master was. However, after that incident, he never touched any more cases. No one knew what had caused the young master to lose some of his childhood memories. Perhaps only the young master himself knew the truth behind this. Other than young master, there was also Director Huang, who had been in charge of the case with young master. The boss and madam had asked Director Huang about it. Director Huang only told him to give his young master some time to get over the knot in his heart, because he didn't know much. Deputy Zhang could still remember the look of the young master at that time. He seemed to be in a state of confusion and didn't seem to have any emotions. It was only after meeting the young master of the Fu family that it regained some of its liveliness. Just as Deputy Zhang was thinking about it, Qin Mo unlocked his phone. The youngster's unique voice entered her ears through WeChat. Brother Mo, I'm at your house now. After sending the message, Bo Jiu glanced up, smiling at Madame Zhang, who had brought the tea over. Thank you, Madame Zhang. Madame Zhang found the girl in front of her rather familiar, but she couldn't recall where she had seen her. Chapter 735. Madame Zhang didn't dare to keep looking at her, since there weren't many people who knew where the Qin family's main house was and could enter. Besides, she was here to look for young master. Madame Zhang was still in disbelief. She turned and glanced at the person drinking tea on the sofa. Coincidentally, Bo Jiao caught her gaze. She arched a brow and smiled faintly. Madame Zhang, what's wrong? No, nothing. Madame Zhang was in a daze. If only Madame was here, she would be able to analyze the situation. But she was the only one in the house. Ah, right, there was a cat. Princess, who had been walking elegantly beside the sofa the entire afternoon, was now bristling as though an unruly person had barged into his territory. But Madame Zhang found it strange that Princess didn't pounce over to give her a scratch. Even when Miss Wu came in the past, the princess would scratch her head. Why was it that when it came to his daughter, she had a different reaction? Why was there a different reaction? But Princess knew. This vixen's aura was clearly that of someone who threatened to cut his tail. Meow. This was a disguise to rebel, meow. Princess meowed happily. Bo Jiao rested her chin on her hand and looked at him lazily. She was holding a cat toy in her hand. At this moment, Princess hated his instincts. The cat that would throw away its dignity and pounce on the thing placed in front of him wasn't him. Huh! Bo Jiao smiled when she saw Princess's expression. What she meant was, you can't win me as a cat. You should just behave and be a cat. Princess started meowing again. Bo Jiao bent down and poured some water into his bowl. Princess snorted. You know what's good for you. He lowered his head and licked the water with his pink tongue. His body was unbelievably fat. Even so, he had a lazy and noble aura that ordinary cats didn't have. His snow-white body and chest puffed out made him look like a king. Bo Jiao reached out and caressed his head. She waited casually for his reply. The scene was so beautiful and harmonious that Madame Zhang started to suspect her eyes were playing tricks on her. It was unbelievable that the princess would allow her daughter to rub her head. Usually, when the princess took a bath, the young master had to personally do it. If it was someone else, it would really rebel. Buzz, the sound of the phone vibrating interrupted Nanny Zhang's thoughts. It also made Princess raise his head and look at the owner of the phone. Bo Jiao tapped on the voice note, and a familiar deep voice came through. I'm going back now. All right. After she replied, she caressed her tummy and replied, I'm hungry. What are we going to eat later? Unexpectedly, after she sent that message, the Almighty didn't even bother replying to her voice message and called her instead. Bo Jiao arched a brow. Hey, Brother Mo, what do you want to eat? Bo Jiao listened to the sound of the lighter. The Almighty didn't seem to have any requirements for such things, so she replied lazily, meat, spicy hot pot. After hearing the answer, a voice that seemed to be laughing yet not laughing came over. What else do you eat besides hot pot? Bo Jiao replied seriously, rice. The next moment, the voice on the other side of the phone laughed. She didn't understand what was so funny about it. Chapter 736. So easy to take care of? Rather than saying it was easy to take care of him, it was more accurate to say that he always ate the same few things. Hot pot, meat skewers, rice, instant noodles, and chocolate lollipops. Moreover, every time he ate these things, he would have a blissful expression on his face. Just thinking about it would inexplicably make him feel better. Qin Mo held onto his phone, watching the reflection outside the car window, his gaze gentle. Pass your phone to Madame Zhang. Bo Jiao. Oh. The moment he heard that voice, Qin Mo could imagine the scene of the youngster following his instructions and passing his phone to Madame Zhang. After a short while, the person on the other end of the line changed. Hello, young master? Madame Zhang was puzzled. She didn't believe that girl could contact her young master. Qin Mo said, Madame Zhang, listen to me. Stay further away. All right. Madame Zhang was confused. Qin Mo's voice was calm. Let's eat hot pot tonight. Don't cut too much meat. His eyes get allergic easily. Steam a pot of rice. I'll be home in an hour. Let him eat when the rice is ready. Watch him and let him drink more water. Madame Zhang's eyes widened. She had never seen her young master so concerned about anyone before. Bo Jiao wasn't used to wearing a dress. There weren't any pockets, which meant that there weren't any sweets. Now that she saw Madame Zhang's reaction, she was curious to hear what her puppy had said to Madame Zhang. Why did she look so frightened? All right. Madame Zhang nodded with much difficulty. Qin Mo held a cigarette between his fingers, a playful smile on his face. Is he standing beside you, trying to eavesdrop? MH. Madame Zhang never knew her young master had such a childish side. Qin Mo laughed softly. There's a bag of sweets in the drawer in my room, chocolate-flavored. Pass it to him before you cook. Yes. After making the call, Nanny Zhang hung up the phone. She looked at her daughter in front of her with an even more unfathomable gaze. The main thing was that young master actually knew how to give a girl candy, and it was specially prepared. This was really strange. Bojiu blinked when she saw that gaze. Madame Zhang seemed to be treating her as an unknown. But very quickly, she tossed this matter aside. After Madame Zhang went upstairs and came down, she passed her a bag of lollipops. As long as there was food, it was the most perfect thing in life. Bojiu bit the lollipop and opened the magazine in her hands. She was still thinking about using this posture to see if she could straighten him when she met the Almighty. If it really didn't work out, then we'll talk about it again. At this moment, Qin Mo didn't expect the youngster to have such thoughts. Even more so, he did not expect the other party to wear female clothes. Hence, when Qin Mo walked into the Qin family's house and saw the slender figure sitting beside the steaming hot pot, he suddenly stopped in his tracks. Madame Zhang was the first to see Qin Mo. She greeted young master. Bojiu tilted her body and glanced over, her lips still carrying her unique smile. The corners of her eyes were raised, but the color of her hair had changed. Her long hair was growing without restraint. Her face was still the same, but under the contrast of the black chiffon dress, there was a hint of exquisiteness. Under the light, the tear mole under her brows was alluring, like the illusion of a water demon. Their eyes met. Chapter 737. In the next second, before Madame Zhang could react, her young master had already grabbed her daughter's wrist, heading towards the second floor. This. Madame Zhang covered her mouth, her expression changing. Bojiu arched a brow, but before she could speak, she was pressed against the door. Qin Mo lowered his lids, his gaze inching closer, his breath carrying the slight coldness from outside. He hadn't forgotten. For some reason, he was certain he was gay. His dreams after nightfall were all about the person in front of him. So many times, he had dreamed of tearing her clothes apart, bullying her harshly. Now, this guy doesn't want to live anymore. After his confession, she still had the guts to cross-dress in front of him. Qin Mo tightened his grip. Bojiu didn't try to break free. Instead, she stared into Qin Mo's eyes, her lips lifting. Brother Mo, looking at me now, don't you think a girl is better? His boiling blood was instantly extinguished after hearing this sentence. Qin Mo watched the person in front of him, his voice cold. Is this the reason for cross-dressing? You want to tell me a girl is better? Bojiu was good at reading people's expressions. She knew the Almighty was angry and was thinking about how to express her desire to straighten him out. Qin Mo's gaze turned colder and colder, like the deep sea, without any warmth. Even his nobility couldn't suppress that unique indifference. I like men, and I will only like men forever. Does my liking make you feel so uneasy? So uneasy that you are using cross-dressing to change my mind? It seems like you really can't accept me, but I won't give up on my feelings for you. Keep your thoughts to yourself. Don't make me angry. Bojiu opened her mouth. Before she could say anything, a familiar coldness came from the side of her lips. It was a cold kiss. It was cold from head to toe, just like Qin Mo's heart. Bojiu had always wanted to straighten him out, but she had forgotten that a person's sexual orientation couldn't be changed, even if she didn't want the Almighty to be gay. But she understood now. She didn't want to, but the truth was the truth. In a trance, those thin lips moved to her ears and threatened. Joe, you don't seem to understand your brother too well. Once I set my eyes on something, I will never let it go. With that, Qin Mo retracted his hand and stood there with his back straight. For some reason, his voice was deep and cold. Change into your clothes before coming down. Bojo stood in the same spot, watching as the figure disappeared by the door. She wondered if she should keep her distance. The Almighty's attitude explained everything. He didn't like her as a girl. Unfortunately, she was a woman herself. That was good too. Bojo glanced up at the night sky. She and the Almighty didn't belong to the same world. Her identity as the young master of the Fu family would last for another month. Before she leaves, she will confess everything. Similarly, he had to forget about his life here. Bojo reached out and wore the black t-shirt. There was a dagger at the side of her waist. She lowered her eyes and laughed. This was the reason why she couldn't be the real Fujio. She was Bojo, the Bojo who was born in darkness and would return to it. She would always have a knife on her body, just like how she would never give up on being a hacker. Just based on this point alone, she and the Almighty would only be opponents, not friends, and definitely not anything else. Chapter 738. Downstairs, Madame Zhang had wanted to ask her young master who the daughter was. But when she saw Qin Mo's icy expression, she swallowed her question. When she was placing the bowls and chopsticks, then she heard a low voice. When did he come? 5. He has been waiting for young master. Madame Zhang studied Qin Mo's expression, unable to understand his thoughts. Only when the silver-haired youngster walked down in a black t-shirt did her eyes widen. Just now that daughter was young Master Gio. That explained why young Master was so concerned about her. If she was young Master Gio, everything made sense. But were all boys like that? Did they like to wear female clothes? Bojo noticed Madame Zhang's expression and smiled at her. Madame Zhang was still digesting the news since the daughter was too pretty and didn't match the handsome youngster. Let's eat. Qin Mo's voice was faint. Madame Zhang knew that her young master wasn't in a good mood, but she wasn't sure why. This hot pot meal was probably the quietest hot pot meal the two of them had ever had. In the past, their interaction wasn't like this, especially the youngster, who was a man of few words. He was polite and even waved at Madame Zhang after the meal. Madame Zhang, I'm going back. Thank you for the hot pot. When Madame Zhang came out, she could only see the youngster smile. Qin Mo gripped the cup tightly, his knuckles turning white. He stood up. I'll send you. It's still early, it's convenient. I call for a cab online. Bojo opened her hands, showing him the screen. Qin Mo didn't say much. After the youngster left, Madame Zhang realized something wasn't right. Under normal circumstances, her young master would always try his best to get young Master Gio to stay the night. Even if he didn't stay, he would send him home personally. But this time he just stood outside. After an unknown period of time, the wind seemed to have started to blow. Assistant Zhang hesitated before walking out with his coat. Young master, let's go back, it's getting late. Qin Mo's fingers twitched. In that moment, he didn't feel cold. It was as though there was a hole in the depths of his heart, allowing the wind to enter. It was empty. He had never thought about what he would do if he couldn't turn him gay. It was a very obvious sense of distance. It emanated from the youth's body. Qin Mo asked himself again, what was so good about this person? If he wanted a good-looking woman, he could find one anywhere. Those who were gentler than this fellow could be found everywhere. Young master. Adjutant Zhang said in a low voice. Qin Mo tilted his head and lit a cigarette, the smoke filling the air. Give the Fu family a call and ask if young Master Gio reached home safely. Yes. After Deputy Zhang finished speaking, he glanced at his wrist. Young master, the revival match is tomorrow. Your hand is important. Hearing this, Qin Mo took a step forward in the night, allowing the dampness to hit his body and the smoke to surround him. It was Chun Xiaodong who picked up the call. After hanging up, he looked in the direction of the second floor. Yes, my young master has returned. Yes. To be honest, there was clearly something wrong with the young master today. How should he put it? He spoke too little. Even his smile was different from before. As soon as he entered the door, he went straight into his room. Chapter 739. Chun Xiaodong couldn't find an answer, because he didn't know that sometimes the revelry of a group of people would show how lonely the person who didn't fit in was. The first stop of the revival match. This day was the last chance for all the Supreme Alliance members. The youngster skateboard, sweeping through the long alley like the wind. Outside the arena, the fans were already looking forward to it. The cheers they could hear weren't any lower than the semifinals, because everyone knew that Supreme Alliance was participating in this year's revival match. That wasn't all. What made the fans even more excited was that person's return. Swoosh! The car door was pulled open. The first thing that caught their eyes was the pure black uniform, fluttering in the wind. Many female fans couldn't help covering their mouths. The media had once said that Qin Mo's appearance was no less than an A-list superstar. This time it was even more so. He stood in front of the car, tall and straight, his side profile handsome. His left hand was wrapped in a white bandage, like 1,000 layers of petals spreading out, cold and indifferent. The two words, Supreme Alliance, floated in the wind like dragons and phoenixes. Some of the teams at the side saw it and realized that it wouldn't be easy for them to win this time, because Qin Mo was back. Qin Mo's return attracted some teams that didn't need to participate in the revival match. However, they sat in the audience seats, wanting to see how good Qin Mo was. In the resting room, Lin Feng bent over to tie his shoelaces. He raised his arm and naturally placed it on Yun, whose shoulder. "Are you worried?" "Of course not." Yun, who tilted his head, his lips still filled with arrogance. The two of them wore the same uniform, and when they stood together, they looked especially compatible. The revival match wasn't just a test of skills. It was also a test of the team members' endurance and stamina. That's right, stamina. A high-intensity consecutive match. 5 matches in a day. Each match would take at least 2 hours. Such intensity was a form of training for the contestants' eyes. Moreover, they had to consider tactics and how to recover their hand speed. Every team had to measure their members' fitness and endurance before arranging the order of appearance. It was different from the other teams that talked about strategy. Qin Mo held a cigarette between his long fingers, looking as handsome as a celebrity. "Finish it quickly, don't waste time." "Not too much, not too much." Lin Feng arched a brow, turning towards Bo Jiu, who was putting on her uniform. "Little Spade, captain's words mean don't nag, just do it. I also think it's better to win as soon as possible." The young man looked up, his porcelain white canine teeth biting on the zipper. With a tearing sound, he finished putting on the battle uniform, but the smile at the corner of his mouth was still evil. "Otherwise, how can we show our standards?" Lin Feng snorted. These two people were really of the same path. They were really shameless. He also had to consider the feelings of the other teams. Everyone was still discussing strategies, but these two were actually thinking about how to save time. "Take it easy. You might be able to kill quickly, but Sister Yao and Baby Monk won't be able to keep up." Lin Feng opened a bottle of water and shot her a look. Bojo glanced back and smiled. She didn't say much, rolling up the sleeves of her uniform. She bit on her lollipop and stretched her legs casually. Her legs were loose, looking devilish. Chapter 740. Qin Mo's gaze was calm. The voice that came out of his thin lips was graceful, but deafening. "Let's go." With that, everyone stood up. Everyone stood up. Their postures and appearances were all different, but because they were all wearing the same uniform, they gave off a fiery aura. The lights shone down. The cameras were aimed at one spot. When they walked out, he felt as if something had collapsed at this moment. Even from the camera, it could be seen that the audience's eyes were overflowing with light when they saw these people. Supreme Alliance will definitely win. It was a cry of support that came from the bottom of their hearts. They didn't want them to stop here. They wanted to keep winning. I didn't expect this team to be so famous. In a corner of the audience, there was someone with a half smile. Just a look at his figure was enough to tell that he wasn't bad looking. But he was dressed up tightly. When he spoke, he pressed down on the brim of his cap to avoid the passing fans. On his left was a slender figure. His eyes were like ink as he stared at the silver-haired youngster. His high-nosed bridge was accentuated by the flashing lights. He didn't speak. However, it could be seen that among the 3 people who came, he was the most central one. Ayaya, there are so many people in China. There was a baby-faced youngster with black-rimmed spectacles and a school bag. He pushed his spectacles up and sized them up. We only see such a huge crowd during the National League. There aren't usually so many revival matches. The number of people in different countries is different. Why are you carrying a teddy bear bag? Aren't you childish? Watanabe, who was wearing a cap, reached out and flicked the youngster's back. The baby-faced youngster widened his eyes. What do you know, this is called disguise. The 2 of them were about to quarrel again. Let's find a place to sit first, the man standing in the middle said calmly with a magnetic voice. I know. The baby-faced youngster stretched out his hand. Vice Captain, you want to sleep, right? I bought 3 tickets for the quietest seats. It's perfect for watching the competition. If you're bored, you can rest here. What's there to rest for? Look at the beauties around us. Watanabe had always been a playboy. Someone once said that he was only in love with esports. Other than esports, there was nothing else that could keep him going. The 3 of them sat down. Only Hoshino's gaze was focused on the arena. As for the other 2, one was playing with his phone out of boredom, and the other was lowering his hat. In short, no one really cared about this revival match. After all, an international esports team like theirs did indeed have the right to do so. It wasn't arrogance, but it was the most normal behavior. The revival match had officially begun. There was a line of words clearly written on the screen above. 1v1. The members of Supreme Alliance, Qin and Mo. Just the appearance of that name. The neon lights converged into one beam. Whispers could be heard from all directions. They were talking about the man who was already sitting in front of the computer. Elegant, abstinent, handsome. However, he was such a person, but it only made his opponent feel a little. An indescribable chill ran down his spine. Was Supreme Alliance here to revive? He was clearly here to get back at them. As soon as it started, Almighty Qin appeared. Chapter 741. Swish. The sound of the game's sound effect sounded. Before the crowd could react, Lin Fan had already left. Qin Mo's slender fingers were already pressing on the keyboard. The computer version of Hero was different from the mobile version. Hand speed was very important, but Qin Mo gave people a feeling that he was not in a hurry. When the audience reacted, they found that he was actually using one hand, and the other hand was just a support. This made the opponent angry. He couldn't hold back his temper and directly jumped over from the wilderness, wanting to sneak attack. But at this moment, Qin Mo's operation suddenly changed. However, at this moment, the opponent didn't notice it. Only the audience who could see the full screen knew. Qin Mo was switching pages. He was so fast that before the audience could remember this image, he had already switched to the next one. Just when the audience didn't know what Qin Mo wanted to do, the crisp tapping sound of the keyboard could be heard. No matter how messy the image was, it didn't seem to affect Qin Mo's operation. The mouse moved to the right place, and a fierce kill. At that moment, almost everyone could see that the brilliance on the screen transformed into a long spear. The blade advanced tens of feet with an unstoppable momentum, like a shooting star in the Buddha's light, heading straight for the person who thought he could sneak attack him. The person wanted to dodge, but found it was too late, because when the long spear was horizontally, it seemed to draw a god's domain. His movement became slow, and he turned back, wanting to stab the opponent. Not to mention his hand speed, he couldn't even distinguish the image in front of him. The screen was full of brilliance. KO. The first drop of blood. He was dead, and the person sitting opposite him. His black hair was covered by the headphones, his side profile was handsome, and his facial features were mixed. His operation didn't slow down at all. Not only fast, but also very stable. Less than a second after his death, even the defense tower was attacked by the opponent. The empty arena was silent. No one moved, only their mouths were open. They were even replaying the changes of Qin Mo's fingers when he attacked in their minds, but found it was too fast to form. Commentator. At this moment, Qin Mo spoke. Even the commentator needed his reminder. Cough. Almighty Chin's move. The commentator hadn't finished his words. He was swallowed by a burst of cheers. The audience no longer needed commentary. They just wanted to watch the replay. How could Almighty Chin feel so good when he kills? He even pushed down a tower. He killed his way through. In just a few minutes, the competition would be over. In fact, it didn't take much. Bo Jio supported her chin lazily. Her long and narrow eyes lifted when she saw Chin Mo's operation. Her smile was captured by the cameras, and the crowd screamed again. The Chinese fans are so passionate. I'm so envious. The baby-faced man looked at this scene, and his tone was filled with yearning. Hoshino's eyes were fixed on the screen in the middle of the screen. The youth's face flashed by, and that expression that he was most familiar with. Other than Z, he couldn't find another person like him. However, what kind of disguise could make someone look several years younger? Supreme Alliance's captain is not bad. Watanabe's attitude was a little sloppy before, but now that he looked at the slow-motion screen, his eyes narrowed. Not bad. Chapter 742. Watanabe remained silent. It was rare for the youth to be so serious. What's wrong? Nothing. Watanabe was probably analyzing how he would deal with that move. After his analysis, he laughed. It isn't bad, but it isn't impossible. The maneuver wasn't flawless, but once he thought it through, it wasn't that bad. The youth couldn't understand why he was concerned about the captain of the revival match. The only thing he wanted to see was the skills of the person who had beaten him on the Japanese server. Of course, he didn't think he was that good. After all, his teammates weren't his true comrades. They were the preparatory team. But he couldn't deny that the maneuver in his memory was indeed cool. As the youth thought this, he tilted his head and his back couldn't help but tremble. The vice-captain wasn't sleeping. He was watching the match. This was too strange. One had to know that when attending such events, the vice-captain would usually sleep. Supreme Alliance won this match. This time, Watanabe's interest was piqued. He placed his arm on the railing, his fingers sliding across his lips as he watched Chin and Mo move the mouse. Such a person, even I feel like going down to fight him. Hoshino lowered his lids, following his gaze. The youth spoke softly. Watanabe, hurry and shrink back. Someone is looking at you. How troublesome. I should have worn a mask. Watanabe was helpless, pressing down on his cap and shrinking back. At this moment, he wasn't afraid of female fans. He was most afraid of male fans. After all, there were more guys who gamed. Once in the game, there were more guys who would watch the video tutorials. As a face that kept appearing in the tutorials, Watanabe was more likely to be recognized by the guys. The chances of Watanabe being recognized by the guys was much higher than the girls. Otherwise, the few otakus sitting over there wouldn't have turned around to look at them frequently. The youth was slightly worried. Shall we leave? We just started and you're asking me to leave? It wasn't easy for him to come out for a break. Besides, Watanabe found the captain's playstyle interesting. The youth was depressed. We came out behind the club's back. If we were to be discovered, they'll blame me. Hoshino's voice carried a hint of a smile. The youth was shocked again. The vice-captain had never been like this before. The vice-captain he saw today must be a fake. It's over. Watanabe's eyes flickered with the light of a hunter. How long did it take for him to win? The youth wasn't interested. What about it? The opponent is too weak. If you go up and fight a little more seriously, you'll be able to win in such a short time. When he said this, the youth completely forgot that when the person played the game, one hand was obviously assisting. In other words, this wasn't Chin Mo's true ability. After the match, the person on the other team took off his headphones and was very dejected. He thought about it and said, Almighty Chin, can you give it your all in the next match? Chin Mo paused. All right, just one word. He had to admit that he hadn't used his full strength just now. Actually, Almighty Chin, at this time, you could be a little more sophisticated, like praising me. He admitted it so straightforwardly, but his fans are watching from the side. Chin Mo glanced at him. You're good at sneak attacks. Just be careful not to get killed. That person. Chapter 743. The screen was still replaying the match. The 2v2 team had already stepped forward. Yin Hu and Lin Feng, the Yun and Feng couple, the most compatible duo. The opposing team saw the name list. They stood up immediately. Don't bully them just because they are nerds. How dare they say they aren't here for revenge? From a 1v1 to the 2v2, they were using their strongest lineup. What exactly were they trying to do? Actually, Supreme Alliance wasn't planning on doing anything. They were just considering the competition rules. The revival match was different from the National League because it was a round robin. Hence, if they won the 1v1 and 2v2, they wouldn't have to fight the 5v5. This would reduce the pressure on the team members and save time. In the end, there was only one sentence. Don't talk, just do it. The opposing team hated their bad luck for being matched against Supreme Alliance at the start of the revival match. Their captain was an old member of the circle. Before the competition started, he sent a message to the Alliance's group chat. Zi Xiaopao, Supreme Alliance, don't you dare to go easy on us. That was what Zi Xiaopao meant. Even if they couldn't beat Supreme Alliance in the competition, they had to win in a verbal battle. Zhao Sanpeng liked to join in the fun. The battle is starting. Old Z, I bet no one from Supreme Alliance will reply to your message. Lin Chuntao replied directly. 200. 300. The lazy voice of a goddess replied. Both Ju lifted her lips. She sent a video over and typed a few words. God Z, you're being too polite. We've always been giving in. There's no need to talk about whether we dare or not. Z Xiaopao, Zhao Sanpeng. F asterisk CK little spade. How can you be so heartless? 100, almighty fatty. I'm fine with either a red packet or a bank transfer. This time it was a voice message. Zhao Sanpeng was defeated and could only give away his money. This had always been a joy in the Alliance's group chat. Zi Xiaopao. Honestly, how strong is Qin Mo? He didn't even use his full strength today. That will have to wait until he meets me. Zhao Sanpeng let out a long sigh. I understand. He's always looking forward to having an opponent like me. After all, we're mortal enemies. He can't beat me in terms of looks alone. Zijan Pao grabbed his hair. He must be crazy to come to the Alliance chat, but to be able to fight against such a strong Supreme Alliance. In fact, he was very happy. It was also a good opportunity to let those people under him know that there was always someone better than you out there. Unsurprisingly, they lost the 2v2. Everyone in the team was a little crestfallen. Zijan Pao patted one of the members' shoulders. If we can't do it this year, let's try again next year. Hearing this, the team members' eyes lit up. Yes. He was not afraid of losing. He was afraid that he would be blamed if he lost. However, in a good team, there was no such thing as complaining. Supreme Alliance won this round quickly. It was almost like this kind of aura. He won all 3 matches in a row. One could imagine how excited the fans were. It would have been a happy thing. But there was just one thing that seemed to be wrong. Lin Feng glanced over, watching as the youngster lowered her head to play with her phone. On the other side was their captain, who was drinking water. However, neither of them seemed to have taken the initiative to speak to the other, right? Was it an illusion? What was wrong with them? Chapter 744. Before Lin Feng could ask, Bo Jio stood up. Bo Jio had already stood up, her left hand pressing down on her slender neck, twisting it to the right. It's finally my turn. This person's personality was very compatible with her appearance in the battle uniform. The zipper was never willing to be zipped up properly. It was half opened, revealing the white t-shirt inside. Her entire body followed the youngster's movement, tall and slender. The key was that this wasn't a big deal. In an instant, it caused a commotion in the stadium. It wasn't because of anything else. It was because there was a line of small words written on the t-shirt. Supreme Alliance. Hey Tao. The back was written in pinyin. The font was beautiful black regular script. At the back of the black regular script, there was a green ribbon emblem. Everyone knew what the green ribbon emblem represented. This was a concept that the Spade fans had decided on when they first established the fan club. Fan club wasn't just for show. They tried their best to do positive things. But why did this t-shirt? The girls in the official fan club stood up. Before they screamed, they covered their mouths. That's our fan club's. Yes, that was the one-time fan club t-shirt that every Spade fan would wear. No one expected the youngster to wear it herself. If they weren't fans, they wouldn't understand how it felt. Besides, the youngster turned her face and smiled in their direction. Her eyes were bright, her teeth were white, and her eyes were deep. Because she liked someone too much. Hence, it was really hard to forget how that person looked when he failed. In the same esports arena, not long ago, the youngster stood there, covered in wounds. She was splashed with coke, disgust, and despised. No matter how strong a person was, he would never let you see his wounds. When he came back again, there was a crisp sound of the keyboard. The moment the game's special effects started, the people saw the person on the screen sweeping towards the opponent like the wind. The assassin rushed out of the light, handsome and dazzling. The youngster sitting in front of the computer had an earphone cord around her neck. Her clean and fair side profile looked extremely handsome. Her pale thin lips were curved into a smile. Her pair of eyes seemed to be staring at the screen lazily. Her expression was calm and composed under the scattered light of the screen. Her eyelashes were dyed with arcs. Those arcs were very eye-catching, whether it was those who liked her or those who didn't. As an esports player, the hands on the keyboard were so fast that no one could see where they landed. One hand switched between the small picture and the big picture. When it was broadcasted on the big screen, it was a series of switching scenes. The shoutcaster was dumbfounded. So fast. How was he supposed to nag? Some people said that playing games depended on equipment and levels. There was no denying that it was like that sometimes. But sometimes, when you meet someone with heaven-defying hand speed, it doesn't matter how much attack power you have. Because that person ran away, you couldn't hit him at all. The cannon fire was clearly aimed at the figure flying towards him. But that person moved to the side. With a bayonet in hand, he allowed the flames to spread out behind him. He didn't even look back. Schwa! He raised his bayonet. Against the cold light. Close combat. No one could win against Spade Z's assassin. Skills were cast consecutively. Speed reduction, life steal, and then a heavy stab. KO. Beautiful. The commentator couldn't help but slam his fist on the table. The audience looked back at him with an expression that clearly said, "There's finally something slow for you to commentate on." Chapter 745. The baby-faced youth in the audience stood up uncontrollably. Even Watanabe's gaze deepened. Then he broke into a smile, turning towards the person beside him. No wonder Vice Captain is so concerned about Spade Z. So that's the reason. That move just now should be at an international level. Supreme Alliance is indeed a hidden talent. Initially, he had only come to take a breather. But now, Watanabe felt the need to conduct a detailed technical analysis of Supreme Alliance. Is that him? The youth was still talking to himself. It was obvious that he was shocked by her actions. However, no one here felt it as deeply as Hoshino. The person sitting beside him wouldn't be able to tell that when he glanced at the youngster's hands, Hoshino had tightened his grip on the keyboard. He hung his head low, and his black hair fell on his face, forming a shadow. The corners of his mouth were curling up, until it rose to the warmest and most brilliant angle. There was no mistaking it. Only Z could do that kind of hand speed and penetration. Hoshino looked up again. No one could understand the sparks dancing in his eyes. As the word victory was used, the young man sitting in front of the computer took off the headphones on his head. His messy hair did not make him look out of place. Instead, it made him look handsome. However, no one knew why the youth paused. Bojia paused. That was because she always felt that someone was watching her. From this angle, he could see a dense crowd of spectators. Could it be an illusion? Captain, even if Little Spade's love for you is too obvious, you should hold it in. He's still young, right? Just treat it as another Cheen fan. Your fans love you as their husband. Little Spade is just the closest to you. You should let him have it first, and he listens to you. It's weird that you guys don't talk to each other. It would have been better if Lin Feng hadn't mentioned this. At the mention of this matter, China Mo, who was holding a bottle of mineral water, tilted his head and glanced at him. His gaze was extremely cold. He listens to me? The voice that came out from his thin lips was also cold, but there was another layer of indescribable coldness. It would be great if he really listened to me. When China Mo turned his head to light his cigarette, Lin Feng could see the corner of his lips. It seemed like he was smiling, but it seemed more like he was pressing down. But no one saw it clearly, because when China Mo smoked, his gaze became much colder. Lin Feng thought to himself, "Little Spade, this is all I can help you with. You still have to rely on yourself for the rest." Unexpectedly, when a young man came back, he sat there and asked for a bottle of water. He didn't say anything. He only glanced over at them for a moment. Lin Feng shook his head, leaning over to say, "Little Spade, you aren't yourself today. In the past, when Captain pulled you in public, you didn't resist. Also, when I told you that Captain kissed a girl, you weren't like this either. You must think back to that time and think back to now. Find a balance in your heart. Persevere and chase after him with all your might. Sometimes, Captain isn't so hard-hearted." Chapter 746. Sure, Lin Feng felt that he could understand the feelings of someone who had a crush on someone else. How about this? I'll put it another way. Is it your fault or his fault for what happened today? Boju took a moment. It's mine. Wearing female clothing had the opposite effect. Lin Feng looked as though he had seen a ghost. What did you do to Captain again? Did you try to rape Captain when you were in the same room as him during the variety show, but he rejected you? Is that why you two ended up like this? Every word from Lin Feng seemed to strike at the memories she didn't want to recall. Just like that night on the variety show. She didn't want to think about it. The moment she thought about it, her mind was filled with the Almighty's breathing. She remembered how the Almighty had held her hand and moved her lower body. That burning gaze and panting breath. It seemed to burn her ears even now, especially when the Almighty had said, "It's hard to not be tempted when you see me like this." He had taken the initiative to pull open his black uniform. When his white shirt was half open, his abs could be faintly seen. Those unforgettable, smooth lines also appeared at this moment. Her canine pet. It was mesmerizing. It was a pity she couldn't bring him home like when she was young. That was it. She couldn't go any further. It wasn't suitable for her or the Almighty to go any further. It wasn't suitable for her to have friends. She had encountered far more darkness than light in her life. There were many people with ulterior motives. In this circle, no one could comfort you when you were hurt. They all wanted you to fall. The remaining ones with a conscience won't refuse to help you, but they will also cut off contact with you at the same time. When you were famous, they would appear and call you brother. Bojo had seen her fair share of such people, not to mention those beasts in human clothing that she had sent to prison. Only that person, the pet she had wanted since she was young, even though she knew it wasn't suitable for them to be friends. She wanted to hold on to something. Boju lowered her eyes. The moment she did so, a bottle of eye drops appeared in front of her. She couldn't be wrong about those familiar long fingers. Her body trembled. Other than the bitterness in her chest, there was a warmth she had never felt before. At this moment, Bojo was filled with regret. If only he knew that he wouldn't have the chance to do anything to the Almighty after he grew up. She should have pounced on the Almighty more often when she was younger. He took the eye drops. I don't know what to say. He still didn't break the silence. Lin Feng rejoiced at the fact that he had competed very quickly in these 5 matches. Especially when it was a 1v1, it was either the captain or Little Spade. He didn't know what was going on with the two of them, but they were killing their way through. Even the fans felt that their idol's hands were unusually good today. Lin Feng's heart was about to explode as he watched from the side. How was this a good hand feel? It was obvious that the two of them were in a bad mood because of the Cold War and decided to kill each other in the game. Therefore, on the first day of the revival match, the stamina, exhausting wheel race that everyone had imagined did not arrive. The 5 matches ended quickly, and the winner was Supreme Alliance. When it was time for the shoutcaster to conclude his speech, the shoutcaster scratched his head and forced a smile. Supreme Alliance, their speed is amazing. As for the rest, please watch the replay. Yes, watch the replay. Next time, he would never come to such an occasion to commentate again. Chapter 747. Of course, there was a replay, but no one had expected it, even with Spade Z's presence. The MVP of the entire match was still Chin Mo. But it wasn't strange since there was a 2v2 match. Almighty Chin had Baby Phone watch from the side while he challenged the opponent 3 times. Actually, Baby Phone didn't want to watch, but he couldn't keep up with his captain's speed, so he pushed the tower over. In the end, he took down the city. This way, Chin Mo's kill count was higher than Spade Z's. Of course, that wasn't the only way to evaluate the MVP. There were other contributions. The audience noticed it too, even though the kill count was the same. The two of them were different in other aspects. When Almighty Chin was killing, he had pushed down 1 or 2 defense towers. His output was different. Looking at the string of numbers, even for the players of the pro teams, the only thought that flashed through their minds was admiration. But there was one person who wasn't. He was sitting among the audience, but unlike when he was on a variety show, he wasn't wearing his uniform this time. Instead, he wore a pair of gold-rimmed spectacles and a black mask. The esports industry is really different now. He laughed softly. His words were overheard by the person sitting beside him. Why? Still nostalgic? Even though he was here to watch esports, he was holding onto a book that only a criminal psychologist would read. His long black hair brushed past his fingernails that were dyed red. The light blocked his face, making it hard to see his features. Rao Rong pushed his spectacles up, the lenses reflecting the light. How could that be? You don't know why I'm back. It's all for revenge. Of course I know, but I'm not interested in such a competition. He closed the book. Why does he like to play such a game that doesn't match his identity? He should have come out earlier to play, don't you think? Rao Rong tilted his head. According to his personality, he should have forgotten about you long ago. No, you don't understand him as well as I do. Or rather, no one understands him as well as I do. He cupped his face with both hands, his eyes smiling, but it made one feel uncomfortable. There was a sweet aura around him. Rao Rong didn't say anything else, because there was a point. He couldn't say it out loud, but he had to admit it. When he saw Chin Mo controlling the character to lower his stance and sweep, his bloodline stirred. However, it was only for a moment before it disappeared. Esports. His blood was boiling. He was just an existence that would abandon his teammates once they were no longer useful to him. Rao Rong looked at his hands, the light blurring his expression. According to convention, one of the winning team's captain or vice-captain had to be interviewed. It was impossible for Almighty Chin to accept an interview. The media went straight for Bo Gio, the long-legged youngster. The host led Bo Gio to a quieter place. On the other side, the members of the battle team began to officially leave the stage. But at this moment, on the leftmost side of the audience, one of the male fans suddenly shouted in excitement, "Watanabe, great God!" Watanabe, who was about to leave with his hat on, cursed in his heart. Their first reaction was to look at their vice-captain. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.